All right, the Groton Planning and Zoning Commission is called the orders. We'll have roll call first. Okay, Al,
Here?
Michael,
Here.
Steve is absent, Kevin,
Here.
Lauren,
Present.
and Lauren, would you be seated? Steve, please, and then Jim?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, and thanks everyone for coming tonight. Appreciate your interest. Okay.
Microphone?
Yeah, your microphone's off.
Oh, I'm sorry, thanks for.
It looks like it's dead. Okay. First is dead. Like the lights not turning on and off.
There we go.
Yeah, it's on.
Yep. Yep. Just takes a while usually.
It's called a second life.
All right. Okay, so would Al, would you read the notice for the first public hearing on the agenda, which is the open space common interest community?
No,
Okay, I'm gonna pull this up more.
No,
Is that better? Okay.
no,
right.
we're, that hearing is still open. So
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. You're right. Still.
Yeah.
open. Okay, so I guess with no further ado, we'll hear from the applicant. That's okay. And if you, sorry.
Yeah, that's what I think first.
Yes, I'm sorry. One second, my fault.
See, I forgot.
Even before you, just to say.
Yeah.
So the question is going to be for staff. Is that just, I'm sorry.
Yep.
My question is for staff. And just to clarify, before we get started, does this new open space zone, I'm sorry, new open space provision, change the density that is already permitted under the existing zones? That is, would any additional houses be able to be built under this particular proposal than what there is now?
So the initial calculation to find the maximum number of lots or dwelling units is the same for both open space subdivisions and common interest communities. Wetlands, steep slopes are factored out of the acreage. And then the remaining number is divided by the minimum lot area in accordance with the table that's both in open space subdivisions as well as in this proposed text. However, the design requirements for each are different, and complying with the design requirements may result in different number of dwelling units, maybe more, maybe less, depends on the project, and depends on the design, depends on the property. But the ultimate calculation is the same for both.
And that what we had previously, we've had for in over 30 years. I
Oh,
think,
yes.
Right.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, Deb.
Can we also make just two other issues? I was not present at the last one.
Ah.
I just wanted to let everyone know that I did review everything that we had.
Thank you.
That was stated at that, and I reviewed all the correspondence from townspeople. So thank you very much for everyone. And thank you all for hanging in there for that very long meeting, because it's a very important topic. Thank you.
Great.
I also have watched the video twice and I've read all of the comments that have been sent in.
Thanks, Kevin and Michael. As you may know, that's a requirement for them to be seated and to discuss and vote at this meeting. They have to have listened to every meeting that they were absent from. Okay, so with no further ado, if the applicant would like to maybe go over the updates, and we'd appreciate it if you could try to limit it to maybe around 10 minutes or so. That would be terrific.
I'd be happy to do that. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
This is on.
It is on. You can pull it out if you want.
I'm gonna keep it there. Okay. Good evening. For the record, again, my name is Bill Sweeney. I'm a land use attorney and a partner at the law firm of Tobin Carberry in New London. Thank you for having me back here tonight. I'm here, as you know, on behalf of EG Home LLC, which has submitted an application for a zoning text amendment to create a new open space common interest community use within your zoning regulations that we believe will really create innovative residential developments governed by Connecticut's Common Interest Ownership Act rather than traditional tract subdivision development. Joining me again tonight is Dwight Harris. He's the VP of Pre-Construction and Architectural Design for EG. we had a very lengthy hearing at the last meeting in May, or the first meeting in May. And I'm not going to go through all of the same material that I had before, but I just would remind you again that the issue before you tonight is a text amendment to your zoning regulations. It is not a specific project. It is not a specific location. Certainly, my client has an interest in developing in Groton and investing in Groton. And if these regulations are approved, they may come before this board in the future for a specific project in a specific location. But that's not relevant to tonight's hearing. I would remind the commission that you're really looking at the regulation as one of general applicability and testimony regarding specific locations. I'm not going to address specific locations, and the commission shouldn't entertain such testimony either. At the last meeting, at the end of the last meeting, the commission went through a variety of items that they asked us to propose possible modifications to the text amendment. As you know, under Connecticut law, you can approve a text amendment as proposed, you can deny it, or you can modify it, making it more restrictive or clarifying parts of it as necessary. And so the commission asked the applicant to come forward with possible modifications for consideration. I submitted those modifications by the deadline, in fact, the night before the deadline that the commission set. And so those have been provided to the commission for over a week and for the public as well. I just want to go through those changes and just very briefly to talk about them specifically. If you turn to new section 6.6-6E, we've added a maximum building height requirement to the regulations. There is no such requirement in the sister regulation, the open space subdivision, but there was some concern that we make clear that the underlying height requirements of the zone that the open space common interest community is located in govern the height of any building within that development. So we've made that now abundantly clear with adding that section.
I'm sorry, Attorney Sweeney, could you tell everybody what that height is, please?
It depends on the underlying zone. So you'd have to pull out the bulk table for, but most residential zones, I believe it's 35 feet is generally what it's going to be.
Okay, just out of curiosity, because I think a lot of people here are probably interested in that 180-acre parcel. And staff would, if you want to answer too, but would that be the same height of 35 or is that a different height?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
That being the better question, I think, to rephrase it perhaps, is the RS20 zone. What is the height in the RS20 zone?
Yeah, that's right, it was RS20.
RS20, excuse me.
Yeah, I'm sorry, please, the public, you're welcome to sit there and listen and to participate when it's time, but please don't talk while we're deliberating things or discussing things. Thank you.
The maximum height in the RS20 is 30 feet, as it is in the RS12, the R12, R7, and RU.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I think continue, and again, I want to make sure there's plenty of time for everybody to talk tonight. So again, I'm going to try to keep it brief. Section 6.6.7, this is the definition of common open space lands. There were a number of speakers who asked, can we increase the amount of common open space that's set aside? We had set a proposal of 20%, which is identical to what the open space subdivision regulations provide. We went back and looked at it because there are no lot lines between individual lots. This is a common interest community. We determined that it would be possible to provide some additional open space. So we're actually suggesting an increase from 20 to 25% of the land, the gross area of a property to be set aside as common open space. We didn't want to go any further than that because this is not a regulation for a single piece of property. It's a regulation that goes for smaller lot development in your sort of smaller RS zones and larger lot development in your like RU40 and RU80. So we didn't want to have such a huge burden, particularly in sort of those denser zones. We think 25% is a good compromise. I also added, there was some testimony that was provided about the value of agricultural land here in the town of Groton and the reality that some of the best agricultural lands in town are also very suitable for development. And so we added into the common open space lands that agricultural areas could be set aside as common open space. When we talk about open space, we often think about forests and wetlands, but that doesn't necessarily, we're not necessarily restricted to that. Sometimes there are historically farmed areas, pastures that can actually add to the character of an area and actually could be common open space integrated into a development. We think that there may be particular properties throughout the town where there could be some quote unquote agricultural lands set aside for common use. We think that's an interesting idea, would allow for creativity and design. And so we've added that. And then we also added language at the end of 667 that says public access to common and open space shall be encouraged where appropriate. Moving on, in section 669A, agricultural variety, there was some discussion about the separation distances between buildings. So we modified a little bit of the language as we initially proposed. We said that basically detached dwelling units had to be separated by a minimum of 10 feet from one side of the building to the other. So we kept the 10 feet for single 1-unit and 2-unit dwellings, but any building containing multi-unit dwellings, and as you recall, the regulation allows sort of triplets development, 3 units. Anything that uses that contains a multi-unit dwelling or anything that has a commercial use. We have that provision that allows some very small accessory subordinate commercial use. That has to be separated by 20 feet from one edge of the building to another. So there's a little bit of greater separation for those higher intensity uses. Moving on to section 6.69C, we had already language about shade trees along all streets and parking areas, whether they're public and private. We also had requirements for shade trees along property lines if trees are removed along a corresponding side or rear property line. There was some desire to try to have some more shade tree language. So rather than having sort of a hard count, you will have an additional shade tree for every unit in a development. We thought it'd be better to allow the commission to have more discretion and allow for greater flexibility and creativity, that put a requirement in the regulation that a comprehensive landscape plan, including additional shade trees, shrubs, and other landscape plantings, shall be provided for any open space common interest community. That doesn't lock the developer into any specific number, and it doesn't lock the commission either. So that plan has to be approved by the commission through the special permit process. So it allows for you to really take a look at a specific site and determine where should there be additional landscape plantings, how many, and in what configuration. In 66.9D on driveways and internal sidewalks, I think one of the commissioners who's not here tonight had expressed that the internal roads in these developments are private, and there was a desire to make sure that those still meet emergency standards so that fire trucks, emergency vehicles can get in. So this is already written into your regulations in your site plan, but we sort of did a bootstrap belt and suspenders approach, and basically saying that all internal driveways and access ways shall be subject to the review and the approval of the fire marshal to ensure safe and appropriate emergency access. You may recall that we had a similar type language we installed in the use section. The building official said, hey, I want to make sure that all fire separation between uses is established. That goes without saying, but we put it in here just to clarify and sort of reinforce that idea. Representative Baumgartner brought up at the last meeting a concern about stone walls. There are stone walls on many sort of rural properties, particularly vacant ones throughout the town of Groton, and wanted to have some language addressing stone walls. This is in section 669J. There's already language about stone walls in your regulations, but again, belt and suspenders, we want to be very clear about what the obligation for stone walls are. So we've added, to the extent possible, stone walls must be retained and protected. Stone walls along the perimeter property lines of an open space common interest community should remain, and walls that are removed within the site should be relocated on site and incorporated into the landscape design of the site. Many other communities do this. It's a great way to use existing stone. You don't want stone exported off site. Keep it on site, use it in your landscaping, keep that natural New England feel. Probably the most important change is in the next section, 6.69K, which is buffer area. So rather than just a typical special permit buffer, we've established a true buffer requirement. These buffers would be provided along the perimeter of any open space common interest community where it abuts a residentially zoned parcel to provide privacy from noise, headlight glare, visual intrusion. And the minimum width of that buffer area is scalable. And why is it scalable? Because again, the common interest community spans sort of the gamut of residential zones. You have much more dense residential zones than you have much less dense zones. So in the R7, the R12, and the RS12, you have a 15-foot buffer that's required. In the RS20 and the RU20, a 30-foot buffer. And then the RU40 and the RU80, we really have the room to work, a 50-foot buffer. And then we borrow from the same language, sort of the same palette of words that you use already for your buffer language. That buffer area has to include plantings consisting of evergreen trees at least 6 feet in height, planted at intervals that will create a continuous screen of vegetation while providing enough space for that tree to grow. Alternatively, though, the P&Z could also improve a 6 to 8 foot high earthen berm or a solid or opaque wall or fence with additional landscaping to accomplish those same purposes. And in situations where you have natural vegetation, you have natural woodland that's already there, the commission can also accept that natural woodland to meet the buffer requirement. That is the sort of the gamut of all the changes that we propose tonight. I'm sure there's a lot of people that want to talk. Again, I would remind the commission, there is no application pending for any specific site. This is the first step to discussing it. And I think, Commissioner Zod's discussion last month and his question at the beginning of this hearing tonight is right on line, at least in my mind. I respect Deb's Jones's answer. You cannot do more units than what's allowed. But in reality, when you put in all the architectural design requirements, when you put in all of the open space and common interest open areas that you have to put into these developments, when you put in the alleyways, the internal driveways, the parking areas, the amenities in a common interest community, and you know this from the way your zoning works, it eats into your density just organically. So what the density that's allowed under this zone is exactly the same density in your open space subdivision regulations that have been allowed for all these years. The only difference is rather than individual tract houses on individual lots, we have a single lot organized as a common interest community where there's a professional management and the people who own those individual homes are part of an association that professionally manages it. That's the only difference. And through that, we can get much more beautiful and creatively designed projects that don't look like they're coming out of Texas or the Midwest, but they can still maintain all the character and beauty of Southeastern Connecticut. So again, I thank you for your time tonight. I'm going to be available for questions. I would reserve a right to rebuttal, and I promise, Madam Chairwoman, I'll try to be brief if that happens. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Attorney Sweeney. Okay.
Could I make a few comments before you?
Sure.
To the public? Thank you.
Absolutely.
So I want to reiterate what Attorney Sweeney said. This is a text amendment. It is not a development proposal. If it's approved, it does not change the zoning designations for R, RS, or RU zones. If it's approved, it is another option for residential development in the R, RS, and RU zones. If approved, it will join residential options that already exist in your regulations. Subdivision, open space subdivisions, cottage communities, residential life care communities, and active senior housing. Those last three, the cottage and the senior and residential life, those are all multiple units on one lot. If you take action tonight, I'm recommending a July 1 effective date to give us time to get it into the regulations. I'll have another recommendation if you decide to postpone your decision. This hearing does need to close by May 19. That's all. Thank you.
It does need to close unless the applicant
That is correct.
decides.
So
to
the
extend
applicant
it.
could request an extension, but you cannot require it. That's right.
Right, I understand.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so at this time, if people from the audience here, if you'd like to come up and speak, and the only thing I would ask, and I know you all have submitted really a lot of comments, and we've read every one of your comments. But if you hear that someone else has already said what you're going to say, if you wouldn't mind trying to shorten what you're going to say so that we, save time for everybody. We do want to hear what you have to say, and we look forward to it. So the first person, when you come up, please always state your name and address. Okay. Somebody like to come forward? Okay. You don't even have to raise your hand. There's so many of us. You can just keep coming up. So.
Thank you very much. My name is Carmen DiStefano. I live at 540 Noack Ledger Road, Mystic. And my property abuts the property in question, as I understand it, the farm that was, is Joe Fougere's, or the heirs of Joe Fougere. And I have to tell you that this is the first I heard there was a plan to change zoning on that to allow highly dense condominium type. Buildings.
I'm sorry,
Not sure why.
excuse me a minute. Could somebody either stop talking there or close the door, please?
It's feedback.
It's
Yeah.
someone's watching live and it's feedback.
Oh, no, I hear I hear.
Take it out.
Oh, there, yeah.
Yeah, it's the speakers on their phone. They're listening to the meeting. on
Sorry.
it.
Hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Carmen DiStefano. I live at 540 Noack Ledger Road in Mystic. My property directly abuts the property, as I understand it, in question, Joe Fougere's or his successor's property. And I was pretty shocked to hear that RU20 zoning is proposed. There's a proposal to change that to allow what I understand to be dense condo type development. It's not in character with the town. It's not in character with Mystic section of the town. Noack Ledger Road itself is a narrow road where people already speed. I've lived there 45 years. My understanding is they can't put water up Noack Ledger Road because of the rocks in the road. Sandy Hollow Road is a scenic road that's winding, curving. I think this proposed development of intense housing, one, is counterintuitive to me. I don't know about anybody else. It seems like we're revisiting the problems that were proposed when the oral school property was discussed. And I want to go on record as saying I oppose this proposal. I don't know the details of it, but I oppose it. Thank you.
Could I ask for a clarification, please? So we have a text amendment this evening, right? We don't have a property proposal development for us. So there's a pretty big distinction there.
I understand what you're saying,
Right.
but this is setting the stage for development, not just of this property, but properties around the town. And this, to me, is a way to backdoor in this kind of development on property where it's unsuitable.
Can I finish my distinction? So my distinction is it's a text amendment, right? So we understand multiple properties are going to be affected throughout the town, but we have to stay so on the text amendment. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. No, I agree. We do stay with the text amendment, but you also have the realization, if you put through a text amendment, it could be available for, and it depends what, say, the minimum lot size is.
Sure.
If we were to keep it at 15 acres, if we were to keep it at 15 acres, it would be available on what, close to 15 properties that we know of right now in town. So, I mean, these are the last remaining unbuilt, properties.
They are, and that's what makes
We
this
can have a
extremely
discussion.
important for
Yep.
the town.
I started doing that.
But the area, Mystic.
All right, sorry, just a sec.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's to hear
Yeah,
public
we have to-
testimony. Let's not
Yep,
discuss.
okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, so.
So just to summarize, I see this as affecting lots of different properties. The suitability of this proposed ordinance as it affects the property that I bought, I think is inappropriate.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Beth, I had eye surgery today, so put my Dollar General glasses on. Fire away. My name is Frank Garavecchia. I live on Sandy Hollow Road, number 553. I've lived there for about 41 years plus now. The subject tonight is the text amendment to the zoning regulations allowing for highly dense common area development, changing the current RS20 zoning. Glasses away. Yeah, so dry. I have been living in Sandy Hollow, like I said, over 40 years. I was attracted to the rural, you call it, picture that it would show every season of the year. A change to the RS20 to allow open space development would kill the scenic road and potentially other properties of over 15 acres. It would be the Wild West for developers targeting all available lands for 15 acres with no considerations of existing neighborhoods or historical identities. The cultural fabric of neighborhoods would be destroyed. In some areas that have 15 acres or more, that would be targeted for this dense development. They're rural areas that have homes that depend on well water for their homes. Dense development has a very high potential to disrupt water supply or pollute the grounds that filter the rainwater, streams, and aquifer. The RS20 would allow dense packing with no property boundaries and minimal offsets from existing properties. Currently, you can put one house per 20,000 square foot, which is a half-acre parcel. The change in the RS20 would allow potentially up to 5 homes on that half-acre. And each house would be allowed to be up to, not saying there's going to be that many houses on each one, but each house could be 5,000 square feet, according to what I've read. The RS20 of change would result in what I think would be cheaply affordable condominiums. But I doubt that any developer would be able to deliver affordable new construction in today's age with the cost of materials and labor being what they are. There have been meetings by developers and attorneys with the town trying to move for more housing support, the increasing job market here, electric boat, etc. I grew up in Mystic. I've lived in Mystic most of my life. I'm retired now, and I have noticed a lot of suspicious activity around my home. I've noticed reliable traffic counts, LLC, their initials are RTC, several days conducted a traffic count study on Sandy Hollow as well as no Ledger roads. I asked the town about it, they knew nothing about it, so. Next point, I had SLR, Land Environmental Surveying, in front of my house, conducted a survey on Sandy Hollow. SLR, per their website, does a specialization in developmental surveying. I have seen fluorescent orange stakes on properties on Sandy Hollow Road as well as Noack Ledger roads, which could be suspicious for something, I don't know what. Attorneys for the developer told a local newspaper that they had no comment regarding any of these issues and that they had no involvement in whatever this could be. I know nothing about it, it was said. I'm concerned as a homeowner that loves the area. I hate to see the character changed, and I'd hate to see groundwaters polluted. This issue should be addressed on a case-by-case basis. I know we need housing, but it should not be a sweeping, broad brush change to the zoning to allow almost a Wild West change. Groton. It should be a case-by-case basis. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Portia Bordelon. For full disclosure, I'm a Groton Town Councilor. We have a Groton Town meeting going on, And I demand that, we make an effort to not have these meetings on the same time as a town council meeting, because they should be allowed to be in the big room. We should expect an audience like this. So thank you, thank you, thank you for coming up. I counted over 150 people in the overflow in between here. So close to about 150 people, and people that are turned away because it's just so big they can't stand. That speaks volumes. Stay involved. Fight for all the land that's left. We ain't got much left. We deserve to be a part of this decision. We choose Groton because we love it for what it is. Just because EB is growing does not mean that everybody needs to live in Groton or Mystic. One of the most beautiful things about land is once you develop it, you'd never get it back. What we have is something very precious. And yes, I agree. We can't talk about Mr. Sweeney's here representing a client, but we can't talk about a property because his position is based on the fact that he's working with a developer. We can talk about that. And he's proposing a text amendment that would affect property around these people's home. We can say that for the record. Anything over 15 acres would be affected. Everybody in any part of this town, even if it's privately owned and they're not planning to develop it, this text amendment will have drastic change for decades and centuries to come. We chose to live here. We should care about what our people want that live here. And we can talk about all the people to come later that are going to move in and all these people with EB. But if you drive us out, what do you got? A blanket text amendment can have a lasting effect on our environment, our wildlife, our water supply, our school system, and many things more. I understand from both perspectives. I live in the city side of Groton, grew up on High Street in Mystic. I understand the need for housing. But with that, it comes with a lot of responsibility. And that responsibility is held here to make sure that we're making reasonable, respectful, and Groton's, interests are being held. One of the attractabilities is the ability to not be in traffic all day and not be New York City. We didn't choose to live in New York City. We want to live in the town of Groton. And we have an obligation to make sure that we're just not doing blanket text amendments that we think are going to fit every parcel of land that's left. There's not much left. When you look at that chart, there's not much land that's left. I repeat, there's not much left. Wolfbrook property, which is butted up around here, one of the most proudest things that I did on the town council with Councilor Baumgartner, now state rep.
Hold on a second.
We
Hold on.
protected.
Would you address the commission?
Yeah, sure.
please?
Sorry about
Not
that.
The crowd.
We
And if the
protected.
crowd could not clap,
Yes.
please.
Thank you. We protected Wolfbrook property. That was one of the biggest land ownerships that the Groton Town Council decided to do for a reason. That space is protected. It has indigenous history there, all of that. Pequot Woods, all the land again, we can't talk about specific land, but a land that I know on Sandy Hollow that was at one of your other meetings, possibly being proposed to be developed, is all attached to that land. The indigenous people just didn't hop over one section and say, oh, not this one, let's develop here. All of that land is sacred land. And yet it should be considered that. We shouldn't develop it all. The state is pushing for right now. And just because the state's doing it doesn't mean we have to do it here. It's an option. The state is pushing all towns to push for more development, more housing. Well, if you look at history, we realize some of the mistakes that we made, we wish we didn't do. And that we just don't want that to be for us in Groton. One of the things that state is looking at is making sure we're looking at affordable housing. And the proposals that I've seen around and options that are going to be possibly developed are not affordable in the lower middle income bracket. So if we're going to take land away, we need to make sure it's being used in a way that's going to be protected to our community. So I know you guys have a hard thing to do here. I think everyone deserves a chance to speak tonight. And I think this should be continued, and it should be in a public place where everybody can sit in one room, not stand in a hallway, not sit in the back room, and feel welcome. So I encourage this commission to do that and set a date immediately so that everyone has a seat at the table and has a chance to talk tonight. I stand with the community. I will support you guys all the way through this. Continue to speak up and stand up for what you believe in. And I thank this board for taking the opportunity to go through this, because I know you guys are tasked with a hard decision tonight. But again, Protect our land, save it. Once it's gone, it's gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, audience, thank you very much for waiting till the end to applaud. I appreciate that. Okay, the next person, please.
My name is Fred Turnbull. I live on Florence Drive, on the corner of Nolan, Ledger and Florence Drive. I've lived there for 36 years. Before that, Florence Drive, none of you know the history of it. You're all ignorant, I'm sure, of that neighborhood and how it was developed and why it was developed, but that's a story for another night. I also remember when we were discussing the Wolf property. Almost 20 years ago. And you know, the only reason that wasn't developed wasn't, they got all the zoning approvals they needed. The only thing that stopped it was the 2008 financial collapse. That stopped it. And then by the grace of God, the town of Groton, Gosha, and some other public concerns, they stepped up and purchased the land, on behalf of the public. Well, what we're proposing tonight is an open-ended blank check. And I'm very much in opposition to it. And I think the previous speakers have said it all pretty well. I just wanted to get up and voice my opposition to it. And Councillor Borderline, who was just here, eloquent. He hit it all the cylinders. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, I'm Lindsay. I live on 514 North Ledger Road. And I am not good with public speaking, so I'm super nervous, but I thought it was really important to come. I know we're not supposed to talk about specific properties, but I did want to at least mention, I know a lot of these decisions is related to tax revenue, money for the town. Doesn't always matter how it affects the residents. I have 4 children that love running through the woods back there. The Peapod Woods it's got wonderful trails, everybody walks over there with their dogs. But something to point out, if you live over there, you realize that there is no city water or city sewer within a mile. So anybody that wants to develop over there would have to be connected to a mile distance, which looking at the cost for that would be at least $1 million for this residential condos to attach to city water and then sewer. They're not gonna be able to tear up Sandy Hollow. It's a scenic road, so they would have to go down Nolan Ledger and connect down to Daniel Brown. I looked up the maps to see how close everything was. So they would be tearing up basically the whole road across tree trails down to connect to city water. And the other point would be that we are already discussing how difficult it is for that intersection between Sandy Hollow and Allen Street. That's been a topic for a while, about it needs a roundabout, there's a lot of accidents already over there because of the traffic, there's anybody that's not over there, it's like a 5-way. There's people coming off the highway, people going on the highway, coming down from this, they coming across, it's awful.
Again, excuse me, please address the commission. Thank you. No, don't worry about it.
You're doing great. Keep it.
Yep.
So I usually avoid that intersection altogether. I'm a nurse. When I hear the sirens, I already know what's happening. I'm running over there to see if I can help. And now you're gonna add 3 other cars going that direction, or they're gonna be going down Half Meadows, which is another little farm that would be affected as well. People are already flying down that road. There's kids that ride their bikes along there. There's not sidewalks past my house, actually, and at my house. So there's no sidewalks down that side, and you're gonna make it busy the whole way down. I'm just, in case you can't tell, I'm totally opposed to it. And I'm sure there's many other areas, not just my little part of town, that would be affected by this, that people just aren't looking at the future, they're looking at maybe a quick buck and not how it affects all of our kids' futures. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Lindsay, do you have a,
Thank you.
what's your last name? Greenlee?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Hello, good evening, everyone. I'm Rick Baumgartner, 162 Daniel Brown Drive in Mystic, and also very proud to represent the 41st House District, Groton and Stonington in the General Assembly. I attended and spoke at the Commission's previous meeting on this proposal. Since then, I've spent additional time reviewing the zoning text amendment, listening to residents, reviewing planning maps, considering the town's conservation and infrastructure policies, and thinking carefully about the precedent this proposal would establish. After that review, I've come to the conclusion that they do not support moving forward with this zoning text amendment. I want to be clear at the outset. We support housing growth in Groton. We understand the pressures our community is under. We have workforce needs, regional housing demand, and continued growth tied to our local economy. Yes, Groton needs thoughtful, responsible housing policy, but this proposal, as drafted, is simply not a housing proposal. It is a broad new zoning framework that would change how certain residential development can occur across large areas of town. That is why I believe the Commission should be very cautious before adopting it. As drafted, this amendment would allow higher effective density through a reduced lot area equivalent and flexible site design. It would require only 20% open space without clearly requiring that open space be contiguous, ecologically meaningful, or connected to existing conservation priorities. And it would create a new framework before the town has finalized its plan of conservation and development. That timing matters. The POCD is supposed to guide major land use decisions. It should help answer where Groton wants growth, where Groton wants conservation, where infrastructure should support development, and where development intensity should be limited. I do not believe a new zoning tool of this scale should move forward for that broader planning process is complete. Since the last meeting, I've also heard from many residents who are not simply opposed to housing. They're concerned about whether this amendment is too broad, whether it is being advanced too quickly, and whether it could apply in places where it conflicts with existing policy goals. These concerns are legitimate. The first issue is sewer avoidance. There are areas in Groton where state guidance and local planning have identified that sewer expansion should be avoided. That includes Pequot Woods. These areas are often connected to groundwater protection, environmental sensitivity, and long-term infrastructure planning. Yet this zoning framework relies on public water and sewer service while not clearly limiting itself to areas where higher density sewer supported development is appropriate. That is a serious policy conflict. If a land use tool depends on sewer service, then it should be targeted to places where sewer supported growth is actually consistent with planning policy. It should not create pressure to extend or intensify infrastructure in areas where the policy direction has been to avoid that. And this sewer avoidance area is a designation per the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. So the premier land use and environmental quality agency of our state. The second issue is agricultural land. Some of the land potentially implicated by this type of framework includes active agricultural land, including land enrolled under PA 490 and used for productive purposes such as grazing. PA 490 reflects a state policy choice to preserve farm, forest, and open space land by recognizing that these lands have value beyond their developmental potential. A zoning framework that increases underlying development potential can unintentionally incentivize the conversion of those lands. Even if that is not the intent, that can be the effect. That matters in Groton. Working landscapes are part of our environmental, cultural, and rural character. Once agricultural land is converted, as fellow Councilor Bordelon so gracefully articulated, it is very difficult to get back. The third issue is conserved open space. This amendment could affect areas near the existing conserved land, including the Wolfbrook corridor, everything ranging from Pequot Woods to Wolfbrook property that was mentioned several times tonight. I find to be one of the best accomplishments this town has made in the last few years. The town has made significant public investments in land protection in that area. These investments were made to preserve environmental value, habitat, water quality, and community open space. If higher density development is allowed immediately adjacent to conserved land without stronger buffer requirements and without requiring open space to connect meaningfully to existing protected areas, then we risk undermining the value of the land the public has already worked to protect. Open space should not just be a percentage on paper. It should function as real conservation. The fourth issue is Native American stone walls and structures and other culturally significant landscape features. These features are not the same as ordinary open space, and they should not be treated as incidental site constraints. They may represent cultural, historic, and spiritual landscapes that require careful identification and protection before land use intensity is increased. A broad zoning framework should not move forward without clear standards for how such resources will be identified, evaluated, avoided, and protected. The fifth issue is the legal and procedural precedent. Under Connecticut land use principles, there is an important distinction between creating a use in the zoning regulations and later reviewing applications that came in under these regulations. Once a use is established and standards are adopted, the future commissions may have less practical discretion to deny an application if the applicant can demonstrate technical compliance with the regulation. That is why the drafting of the regulation matters so much. The question before the commission tonight is not simply whether one project should or should not be approved. The question is whether the town should create a new entitlement pathway that future applicants may rely on across multiple areas of crime. That is a much bigger decision. If the commission wants to consider this type of development model in the future, I believe it should be done through a more comprehensive process after the POCD is finalized. That process should identify where the tool is appropriate, where it is not appropriate, and what standards are necessary to protect the town's conservation, agricultural, and cultural and infrastructure goals. At a minimum, any future version should include clear geographical limits. And without those elements, I do not believe this is sound zoning policy. Again, I support thoughtful housing growth. We support tools that allow Groton to meet its needs, but this certainly is not it. This amendment is too broad, it is premature, it creates too many unanswered questions, and it risks placing higher density development pressure in areas where the town's own policies suggest we should be cautious. For those reasons, I do not support this zoning text amendment and respectfully urge the commission to reject this amendment moving forward as it is proposed. Thank you.
That's great.
Good evening, Chair, members of the Commission. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Sean Banks. My address is 80 Bel Air Drive, Mystic, Connecticut. I've lived here for about a decade. I've raised 6 children here, even though it may not look it. I am a volunteer firefighter and an EMT, so this town and its people mean a lot to me. Tonight, I just want to address the use of the text amendment to change our zoning regulations. So for some of us, I see a lot of faces that don't necessarily look like me. I want to try to convey what this means in a way that's digestible. So a text amendment may look like a small wording change, but in practice, it's one of the most powerful actions a commission can take, right? It does not apply to a single parcel or single applicant. You know, much like Councilwoman Vordelon and Representative Baumgartner said, I'm going to speak to in more broad strokes, if you will. It doesn't apply to a single parcel or a single applicant. It rewrites the rules for every property within the affected zoning district. That means any changes made tonight becomes permanent, a permanent townwide policy shift. Because of that, a text amendment must be held to the highest standard. It must clearly serve the public interest, not the needs of any individual applicant. It must be consistent with the plan of conservation and development, which emphasizes protecting rural character, preserving natural resources, and ensuring that infrastructure capacity guides land use decisions. If a proposed amendment undermines those principles, it is not appropriate. A text amendment also creates precedent. Once the regulation is changed, the town cannot selectively deny the same rights to other landowners. Sorry, I lost my place. That means that impacts of the amendment must be evaluated not just for one property, but for every property that could use the new regulation. Traffic, schools, emergency services, water and sewer capacity, all of these must be considered at full build out, not in isolation. It's also important to recognize that a text amendment is a legislative tool, not a workaround. It is not meant to solve a developer's problem when a proposal doesn't fit the existing zoning. It is meant to guide the long-term shape of the community. if the only way a proposal can proceed is by rewriting the rules of the entire district, that's a sign that the proposal is not compatible with the zoning, not that the zoning needs to be rewritten. For these reasons, I respectfully urge the commission to use extreme caution when considering text amendments. They should be reserved for broad, community-driven policy updates, not for enabling isolated exceptions that could have far-reaching and unintended consequences. So thank you for your time, your commitment to thoughtful, responsible planning in the sixth future.
Thank you very much.
Hello, my name is Shane Gulick, 68 Daniel Brown Drive. Lived there for about 9 years now, lived in the Groton area for almost 20. Full disclosure, my wife dragged me up here kicking and screaming from Florida. The advantage to this area over where I lived in Florida is its small town charm. We keep being reminded to keep this to about the text amendment and not look to the future, but the text amendment is step 1 in a process that will result in step 10 being a bunch of condos being built around here that in an infrastructure that can't support that. And so if we just go ahead and squash this at step 1 right now, I think you're going to make a lot of people, all but maybe 1 or 2 in this room, really happy. And I'm going to keep it short because everybody else has said all the things that I agree with.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Christine Lopes and I live at 523 Sandy Hollow Road. And what I did is I kind of looked at it from a zoning perspective, and currently in the RS 12 and 20 zones, you the zoning regulations now, they encourage 1-unit dwellings and open space subdivisions. While in the RS 7, 12, and 20 zones, you encourage, the commission encourages 1 and 2-unit dwellings. So that's kind of what started me looking at this. So then I did is, I got a copy of the zoning map that I got. And you can see how much effort was made to try to.
If you put it down on the table towards them, we've got an overhead camera.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, if
The
this could
title
be
facing us.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah. 9 degrees, good. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I was really surprised to see myself on how much open space that we have in Groton. It's crazy. And we have so many different zones that the town doesn't really have control of, because you have the Groton Long Point one, the Noank one, you got the city, you got the sub base. But my goal, because of the whole 1-unit dwelling thing, is I really think that the whole entire town and their workforce and volunteers have spent a lot of time from Flanders Road east to preserve that area. You can see it. You got BB Pond open space, you got the Moore Woodlands, you got Stanton Farms, you got the Peace Sanctuary, you got Wolfbrook, Pequot Woods, the Merritt Family Forest. And you can see from Flanders Road, there's a distinct, pattern that RS 20 and 12 are to the east. And I think it was RS 7, which is downtown, which is not on here because it's in the historic district. So those districts are going to take care of themselves. So really, I'm here to protect the RS 20 and 12 zones that I think they should remove from the text amendment. This is just for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm not a great public speaker, so bear with me. So I've been in the Navy for 20 years. I retired here.
I'm sorry, would you give your name and address, please?
Chris Roper, I live on Noank Lane. I came here in 1982. I was in sub school. Electric Boat was building 6 submarines at that time. All at the same time, we had them all up here. I didn't hear anybody complaining about how we need to build more housing. Okay, to me, this is just a blatant money grab. Right now, we're building 1 submarine here a year, 1 Virginia. That class isn't gonna last forever. We're building 2 of them a year, 1 here and 1 down in Newport News. And I don't know how, I don't think we're gonna build 1 Columbia a year, so. I don't see how there's this sudden panic because there's not enough housing. They named Triton Towers, guess what that's named after? It's named after a submarine. They want to build this one called Columbia something. What's that named after? A submarine. All right, that's all it is. It's a blatant money grab. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Raymond O'Connell. I live on 31 Ridgewood Drive, and I've been living there for the last 60 years. I've enjoyed the rural feel of the area, and I think it would be a shame to open it up to a large development or the possibility of a large development. And I just want to let you know, I oppose any change in the zoning regulations that could result. I've seen a lot of development over those years. I kind of missed the smell of the farm when I first moved in. And so I would like you to not sign any changes to the, so thank you.
Thank you very much.
How's it going? My name is Sean Willis. Live on 844 Knowing Pleasure Road. And my great grandfather established the farm, built the house there, the barn. I think we've heard enough on the legal end of things. I just want to tell you that I certainly would not like to see anything happen to the farm. I walk the farm all the time in type of weather that people wouldn't walk through the woods in. And therefore it's very wet, unpleasant, but the dog and I love it. So I can tell you personally that I looked up a certain species of salamander that's extremely endangered. And I've personally seen them and almost stepped on them many times. So they're there, they're abundant. And it was just a point I would like to bring up. And if there was a study that had been done, maybe not. But my study's been done and I've seen them. So, and it's very hot in here, so I think I'm gonna run. But thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Ashton. My wife and I live at 818 Knowing Pleasure Road, right across from Sean that just spoke, and his family and his heritage. I share a 500-foot driveway with one neighbor because we like our privacy on 3 acres. On one side is Sean's home. On the other side is the Abylonia Conservancy, where nothing can be built upon, as far as I understand it. It's a wetlands area that protects a lot of wildlife. My wife and I love being in the woods. We have wildlife coming through our yard all the time. Deer, turkeys, fishers, birds, all kinds of things. Even a pair of bobcats came through. Okay. The proposed areas of development, as far as I understand it, one is going to be possibly on the corner of Sandy Hollow Road and Knowing Ledger Road on that farm. And the other could be sometime in the future, part of Whittle's Farm, which is right across the road from us. We've lived there for 24 years and love the feel of small town living. Okay, the traffic is getting increasingly insane between Flanders Road and Route 1 people drive like 60 miles an hour. We can't even go across the road to get our mail with the dog without being hit half the time. I would like to piggyback a lot of other comments that were made. One, that you're gonna need an impact of sewers and public water. Does that mean we have to get hooked up to the same thing? Right now, we're on a well in a leach field. I don't feel like having my taxes going up to pay for that hookup. I don't like the noise. I don't like the traffic. The traffic going down Sandy Hollow Road to Allen Street right now is crazy. Rush hour in the morning and at night trying to get out of there. The amount of accident there is unbelievable. And thank goodness there's an ambulance right there at the corner because they're here all the time. I wanted to piggyback some of the comments of the other residents here saying that when you approve this kind of text, people are going to be building and developing all over the place. In our area, I'm a little selfish. I would wish that they stayed the heck out of there. Protect the Pequot Woods, protect the farms, protect Whittles Farm, protect my neighbors, protect my area. Again, we've been there 24 years. I would hate like hell to have to move when a bazillion condos all of a sudden get popped up all over the place. Small town feels gone. It's gone. And like that one young lady said, once the land is gone, it's gone. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Heather Summers. I don't live in Groton anymore. I live at 218 North Water Street in Stonington, but I have and was a resident here for 55 years. So as a former counselor, a former mayor, I felt it was really important that I come. I don't like to meddle in local issues. This is really a local decision. It's not a state decision. But I thought it was important that you know that I have been inundated with emails from residents telling me that they are absolutely against this text amendment. I've asked them to reach out to their local representatives because that's really what they should do. But they have come to me. I'm sure they've come to Andre also. And I wanted to just state for the record that a zoning map amendment changes property, but a text amendment changes the rules for every property. And that's why text amendments really need a higher level of scrutiny, I believe. And they're often where the biggest policy changes are made, buried in the technical language that most residents never see until their communities have changed. And I think it's important. Text amendments have been around a long time, but the aggressive use of them has really changed as of late in the quest for additional housing. So I want you to know, I don't live here anymore, but I stand with the people who have contacted me and the residents of this town and this community that have reached out, hundreds of them. I'm happy to forward you all the emails if you'd like to see them, are really against this text amendment zone change. So I hope that you will take that seriously. And one of the things that I will say, as a former mayor, I think it's really important that you finish your plan of conservation and development before you make any decision on this change, because it's going to change the dynamic of the town itself. So thank you for listening. I know you have a tough job and it is warm in here, and I appreciate your time as volunteers, but please take that seriously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hi, Steve Turner, 581 Sandy Hollow Road. My wife and I have lived at our current address for 22 years. In that time, we faithfully maintained and invested in our property, paid all applicable taxes. In effect, we played by the rules. And now under the guise of a housing crisis in the current, and I stress current, but not forever hiring an electric boat, a local developer wants to change the rules for their specific purpose. With regard to the proposed text amendment, Attorney Sweeney has presented a very rosy picture of the future of neighborhood build-outs with singles, duplexes, and triplexes. Not homes, mind you, not home ownership. These are condominiums, all crammed together with literally 10 feet between them. In addition, he's also floated the ludicrous idea of including commercial business in the residential zone.
This would destroy our neighborhoods. At the end of the day, a developer will walk away with their enormous profits and leave the mess that will be borne on the current residents of any of these affected areas. We feel that the need for housing does not outweigh the need to protect current zoning in the RS20 zone. And furthermore, this should not in any way be a way to pressure this commission to provide for such a drastic change in order to satisfy one developer's dreams of grandeur at the expense of our cherished way of life. Let me be perfectly clear. This is not responsible development, nor is this affordable development. This is enormous, calculated money grab. As building the proposed maximum amount of dwellings per acre is directly related to inflated developer profits. While we can acknowledge that more housing stock is needed, the scale and density of this proposed amendment would forever negatively impact any area in town with 15 acres or more of land. While theoretically this is a standalone amendment, it is in reality a tailor-made plan of development for a yet-to-be-filed proposal for an 80-acre parcel of farmland, of which I am bordered on two sides. We are under no illusion that home development will always be needed, but this amendment seeks to change the very zoning regulations that have provided the modest growth and character of our existing neighborhoods. I implore this commission to please, for just a moment, put yourselves in the shoes of the current residents of these potential areas and reject this proposal on its face and not be pressured to change, modify, or pare it down. The effects of this kind of zoning change would be far-reaching and negatively impact not only our generation, but for future generations.
Thank you. Is there anyone else would wish to speak? Okay.
A question about process. There's an overflow room. How do we get people from there just gonna walk over?
Can we just discuss this later? Okay, thank you. Let's keep going.
Jeff Pritchard, live on West Mystic Avenue in Mystic. And what, we have some unusual statements. I recommend that the planning commission not approve this proposed change. There's in some of the write-up there is the references made to section 828 of the Connecticut General Statutes. If you look at the statute, all it talks about is how you manage a community of, it's a co-op business, has nothing to do with what the planning and zoning commission get involved in. It might affect how land records are recorded, but not how they're developed. In section 124, chapter 124, section 8.2 describes what the planning commission does. And it states that they're specified or allowed to go put out regulations for development, which size of lots, buildings, etc. Those are all, that's all accomplished in Groton by our zoning regulations. And if you look at the zoning regulations, each area is described as to what you can do. And in these residential areas, which we're really talking about, it states you can have residential units, either single or duplex, depending on the zone itself. And there's one area for open space development, you can reduce the lot size. That's all it's talking about. You still have a subdivision, and the subdivision requires them to have a plan that shows the development and the lots. And if you look at all the description of the requirements in both the subdivision regulation and the regular area, it specifies the description of what lot goes for the residential unit. So we still end up with lots. there's nothing that says there's no lot, whether it's recorded in the land use record, in the land records, they be different. But you still want to have a drawing that shows physically where the lot boundaries are. And they have certain sizes associated with them in both the regulations. So to duplicate an open space regulation associated with community ownership versus an individual ownership should have no bearing what is allowed. And I think there were some other areas in the proposal that are not realistic either, and they're trying to use special permits to control development or add commercial space on, which you really shouldn't be doing. It should be written up as a description as to how you control these spaces. Not when you have an application where you have to review it. You should have some specs that are written out before that, where you have the time to go through. Because if somebody makes an application, you have only a short period of time to process. And if you look at the density that you end up right now is allowed in an open space subdivision, I think it's sort of excessive. The density is a little bit too high. Probably somebody ought to take a look at and say, is it realistic? How dense the open space regulations? Should we change that by maybe having a higher amount of open space for the development? Because you could end up saying 15-acre lot with several hundred units in there. 15 acres, even after you subtracted the 25% of this open space, which is a lot of buildings. But I don't know whether people have really looked at that carefully or not. But I think what we have is we shouldn't have two open space regulations. We should have one. Because the two are different. One says 15 minimum lots, 15 acres, the other is 20. Which doesn't make sense. They both should agree. Trying to say them. The area in that was identified in section 4.2-3 for the density calculation. That needs a little fixing there because you have some Texas people that already separated, and it doesn't recognize the area that's set aside for roads, which would reduce the maximum development. So, but I think we ought to be very careful if this, acting on the requested change as to whether it's realistic or not. I think it's just not, because you still have to follow all the other rules in the zoning regulation. You don't have to specify building height, it's already in there, varies from zone to zone, or how many units you can have on a lot, which the lots are very small, so you really can't have duplexes or triplexes in sense. That's all I have.
Good evening. My name is Joan Smith. I live at 37 Island Circle South. I'm a vice president of Groton Open Space Association. So for 20 years or more, I've been working, studying, helping to develop plans relating to protecting open space. And I believe calling this an open space community interest community is a misnomer. I think because of the amount of density that would be permitted, it may end up with the same but no more open space than under regular subdivision regulations or open space subdivision regulations. All three of those developments use the same buildable footprint. Most of the land in Groton is difficult to build because of ledge, because of wetlands, because of steep slopes. Water resources are protected because of the reservoir, because of wells. And these regulations as written would squeeze more units into the same buildable footprint that all the other applicants are addressing. This seems to me to be a way to get more units into the same buildable space. And since this is a proposed zoning text amendment, which could apply to other parcels of 15 acres or more, I think it's like the camel's head in the tent of allowing more density, particularly in these are supposed to be rural areas. I was involved in the effort to protect Wolfbrook. Groton Open Space Association donated I think it was $215,000 to the purchase of the Wolfbrook property. The project would have fallen through. The town council only offered a small amount, I think about around $240,000. And Groton Open Space came up with 215, and Groton Conservation Advocates came up with 50,000. So there is public interest, charitable donation interest in the Wolfbrook property. And that lies south of what's now the Groton Treetops, which is a ropes course, but the woods kept intact. And rumor has it that the Fougere property is one of the potential projects. And that field is a unusual, pretty rare in Groton grassland habitat. And it connects to the Pequot Woods. The Pequot Woods is known culturally as a battle site from the retreat from the Battle of Mystic. A small part of that is also on the Fougere property. There are extensive wetlands on the Fougere property. I heard someone earlier talk about rare salamanders. Salamanders, the recommended envelope around the vernal pool is a minimum of 750 feet of protected uplands around the vernal pool. I have not seen the particular properties involved. In the wetlands, it has a little bit of say on protection, but they limit themselves to the 100-foot regulation area. And so I don't think we should make it easier for intense development to enter a rural site in a place that's remote from our downtowns. For more than 20 years, I think since the 2002 or land conservation development, the planning has always been to have intense housing and semi-intense housing in the downtown Groton areas where the business areas are, or in the intermediate sections between the more rural areas to have high density housing. And I don't see why now any 15-acre parcel should become highly dense housing. I think we're trying to have walkable, intense neighborhoods where there's transportation and other infrastructure, stores, whatever. And then that could also be more affordable. If you're going to have something in a more rural area, you're going to need cars, you're going to need people that can afford to do that. So I think there are many reasons why this text amendment is not a good idea. I support what Portia Bordelon said about the values of open space. I support what Andre Baumgartner said. I'm real proud of him. I remember when he came to run for office, he was 19 years old. Everyone said to him, "Who are you? You're so young, what can you do?" And we welcomed him. And I think it really shows. He's really a good, responsible person who was chosen to work on the environment as our representative. I support the statements of most of the people who have spoken. Jeff Pritchard on the Planning Commission gave quite a good detail of the nuts and bolts of the zoning, of the density. I think we should have also a larger venue or continue the hearing. I just came from a back room 2 or 3, 3 it is, and there's a room full of people watching you on their phones, and we just figured out how to turn on the screen on the wall, so now they're watching you on the wall. But they just came back and said, "Hey, do you want to speak?" And I said, "Well, yes." But thank you for giving us the opportunity, and I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have any going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else?
So, my name is Chris Kuhn. I live at 104 Irving Street, Mystic, Groton. And I'm going to try to be brief with my comments. One relates to the confusion that I've had regarding the question you raised, Mr. Zog, regarding the density question. How many dwellings are allowed? And is it the same as a subdivision, as an open space subdivision? And I'm not clear about it. I really am not. So Mr. Sweeney says, yes, they're the same. There's a very informed person, Diane Glemboski, who has been colleague to the planning staff here, who gives very, very detailed an account as to why she says the density is in fact quite a bit higher. Now, I've called and asked for some kind of a meeting with staff here. Could I have this explained? And what I was told is, no, we have a public hearing process going on and the staff can't talk to you. And they directed me, dear members of the commission, to you. I don't know how to reconcile this. I think, that perhaps a meeting, some kind of trying to solve the problem regarding density is worthwhile. My primary worry with respect to this text amendment is related to the protection of open space. I think there's an agreement that we do need housing. What kind of housing isn't part of this, the question I want to address. I'm concerned about the open space. I'm realizing that we're talking about a concept. And so I want to address a conceptual map that was presented by Attorney Sweeney and E.G. Home. The map displays a dense array of dwellings that overwhelm the site. Open space areas appear predominantly to be community greens for recreational use, along with peripheral areas that would appear to represent buffer zones adjacent to areas demarcated as wetland. There are 9 dwellings that appear to border directly on wetland.
And Madam Chairman, I have to put my objection back on the table. This is so specific to a specific site. It's not appropriate for a text amendment hearing. If you allow her to talk, that's your choice, but I need to have my objection.
Sir, I'm talking about a concept. I haven't said a thing about a road or.
Okay.
There's no concept.
Let's just,
There's no such exhibit.
okay, well, your statement will be in the minutes,
Thank you, I
okay?
appreciate it.
Sure. Okay, go ahead, continue, Chris.
2 retention basins are located, I'm talking about the concept presentation, regardless of any address. 2 retention basins are located within what appears to be the buffer zone adjacent to wetland. The schematic representation strongly suggests a near entirety of the parcel would be disturbed in the construction of the community. Many of the identified contender parcels of 15 or more acres with sewer and water availability appear to contain wetlands. In addition to the realization of an actual increase in open space needed in the setting of the contraction of the building footprint, other needed regulatory provisions should include independent environmental evaluation, including a soil scientist to demarcate wetlands. More broadly, evaluation of an application for development of an open space common interest community should assess not only whether the community would be compatible with the surrounding neighborhoods, but also whether the development would pose a threat to nearby ecosystems. Approval of the proposed text amendment in its current form could saddle the town of Groton with disastrous consequences, and I respectfully ask you to vote it down. The creation of an open space common interest community, I believe, is a task appropriate for the Plan and Zoning Commission and town staff, not a developer.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay.
One.
Just a
Good evening. My name is Elisa Wright. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I live at 59 Main Street in Noank. Thank you for the opportunity to offer the following additional testimony in opposition to the above, to the pending application. At its core, the key purpose of zoning is to create an orderly, safe, and balanced plan for community growth while ensuring public health and safety, protecting property values, separating incompatible uses, aligning development with available infrastructure such as roads, schools, water and sewage system, and preserving community character by protecting historic districts, rural farmlands, and natural resources. A diversified and balanced community plan can best be served by maintaining the integrity of the established zoning plan in which single-family residential uses predominate in RS 20, RS 12, RU 40, and RU 80 districts, in which single-family and two-family residential uses predominated in R7, R12, and RU 20 districts, and in which retail and office uses predominate in commercial and mixed-use districts. Serious apprehensions persist that the proposed zoning text amendment could constitute a radical, intrusive, and destabilizing departure from the above good planning principles by the introduction of an unspecified maximum number of 1-family, 2-family, and 3-family Common Interest Ownership Act dwelling units and unspecified commercial uses on any property or aggregation of properties of 15 or more acres throughout the town in any of the aforementioned residential zone districts. If adopted, this proposal could create an overwhelming intensification of density in these single-family and two-family areas. Any significant change to the density requirements in single-family and two-family zones, including the introduction of 3-family dwelling units and commercial uses in those zoning areas, warrants an in-depth and deliberative review process, the kind of study that the community should have the opportunity to engage in ahead of this developer-initiated application. This study could be done, for example, as part of the plan of conservation and development process. The following are, in my opinion, the most critical issues of concern. By way of background, the uniformity rule is a foundational principle of zoning law. It acts as a regulatory tool to separate incompatible land uses while promoting stability in land uses, property values, and quality of life. Section 8-2, friends, little a, prevents 2 of the general statute provides that the zone division may divide the municipality into districts. Within those districts, it may regulate the erection, construction, reconstruction, alteration, or use of buildings or structures and the use of the land. All zoning regulations shall be uniform for each class or kind of buildings, structures, or use of land throughout each district, but each district may differ from those in another. But this uniformity constraint is a structural limit on how far special permit uses can deviate from district character. A commission cannot allow a special use on one parcel while treating the same application differently on another parcel without a rational basis tied to it in the regulations. The threshold question being whether the proposed special permit use actually belongs in the zone at all. But the zoning laws provide a safety valve that allows for certain kinds of classes of buildings, structures, or uses to be permitted after a special permit or special exception, subject to standards set forth in the regulations and conditions necessary to protect the public health, safety, convenience, and property values. So it seems pretty clear that special permits must be compatible with the uses that are permissible as of right in the zone. And I won't go into all the details, but a special permit allows a property owner to use his property in a manner that is expressly permitted by the zoning regulations. However, the special permit must satisfy standards and specifications and conditions set forth in the regulations. And since reviewing of special permit applications is an administrative capacity, your discretion is severely limited to consideration of compliance with the specifications, and therefore that at this stage during the legislative process of, possibly enacting a text amendment, it would be very, very important to give careful, considered thought to what kinds of protections and requirements you should put into this this proposal. And coming down to density, the zoning regulations uses the individual lot as a basis for regulating density and impact on the land. And in common interest ownership act communities, by the statutes, according to those statutes, the individual unit owners own their units while the common areas are owned communally. And I don't see why these units should not be subject to all of the same zoning regulations, including use, density, dimensional standards, and site plan regulations, as all other single-family or two-family residences in the zone. I don't think that the form of ownership makes any difference in this regard. So there's been a lot of confusion about the density impacts, and you might want to consider, in addition to helping us understand what this current proposal really does about density, you might want to consider adding a requirement if you do move ahead with enacting this text amendment and providing for this new use by special permit in all of these residential, you might want to consider a requirement that there will be a density equivalence between the density calculations that it would obtain under section 4.2-3 in, say, normal open space subdivisions or regular in the zone. For if it's single family, it's going to be one, it's going to be maybe different families, but make sure that there's a density equivalence so that no more dwelling units could be developed in an open space, on one of these open space common interest community developments with impacts, on traffic, all the sorts of associated impacts, schools, public utilities, in those zones. Environmental considerations. I also have looked at the mapped parcels of 15 acres or larger in the various zoning districts that the planning and development staff prepared as potentially available for this type of development. And I recognize that it's fluid and non-binding and effective, and based on the information and will certainly change over the decades. But many of those sites, parcels of land, appear to be located in a water protection district or a coastal management zone. Some are in sewer avoidance areas, which kind of reinforces the observation of others that these are, perhaps natural sites of natural resource importance or ecologically important for water protection, things like that. So if that's the case, given the environmental nature of some of these parcels, now would be the time to design and specify permit requirements in any open space common interest community to ensure that important historical, archaeological, water quality protection and other environmental protection requirements are satisfied before the permit can be approved. In conclusion, the genesis of the proposed text amendment is rooted in the specific request of E.G. Home LLC through its attorney for a zone change in order to allow their proposed project, the development of an open space common interest community on an 80-acre parcel of farmland located at 0 Knowing Ledger Road in Mystic, to proceed by special permit. Basic orderly development, it would seem to me, to require that land use regulations should not be altered on an ad hoc basis to accommodate specific projects rather than serve a comprehensive long-term plan. But I do appreciate that homeownership in common interest community, interest communities, ownership interest communities, developments offer a desirable quality of life option for many people. And perhaps the commission could be encouraged to explore other scenarios that you might want to wish to incorporate in the zoning regulations that would be of a more generally applicable and not, popping up in various places in the middle of different residential areas. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name's Kevin Blacker, 11 Church Street, and I'm going to speak in support of this. I'm going to speak in support of this consideration of this zone change. If for no other reason that I really don't like when you get a big group of people together, all offering the same viewpoint, enjoying the comfort, laughing with each other, and I think they no harm in it other than that it stifles debate, critical thinking, creativity. This commission is tasked with looking out for the best interests of town, the town grants. I think you've heard from a highly vocal, highly local sect of town, and your challenge will be to consider what's best for all of town. I would challenge an assertion that was made earlier that commercial use within a residential zone will ruin a neighborhood. I'd say at least one on the commission who owns business in a residential area. My family does, and I think that in the past that commercial use has added a lot to the town of Nutley. So I would point that out. I think that we have a serious problem with housing at the entrance to town. There's a single bedroom apartment for $2,000. That's unaffordable, that's unachievable. That's a problem. Affordability is a problem. I would credit the developer for spending money, putting themselves out there, opening themselves up to the abuse, to try to solve that problem. I would challenge anybody in this room to do the same, to do more than talk, to put up money for the solution, will take action. So I think that's about what I want to say. Thank you.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Cindy Ashton, I live at 818 North Orchard Road, my husband had already speak. I came from a town in Michigan that's gone through everything you guys are going through now. I've seen what happens. I've seen neighborhoods go down. I've seen them go with things like this. And I've got personal experience. Have you ever heard of Traverse City, Michigan? Anyone here? It's a big tourist town, right in Pinky region. We went from town, I had 600 and some graduating class. I came here, smaller graduating classes, it was total different shop. I came here to work for Pfizer. It was nice. I liked the area. I liked the small town feel. I live on Knowing Budget Road. I almost get hit going to my mailbox because of the cars going through it right now. The semi's going through it to get from the highway to another place. I go down to Whittles. Nice farm market. Everybody agree? They're parking alongside of the street. You've got people blazing through them. Seen people almost get hit there. You add more cars to this neighborhood, it's gonna be worse. It already is worse. You've got bicyclists that are trying to ride on the road. You can't do that. This is part of your zoning issue. You can't get more cars on this road. We've already got cars coming off the highway. We came for a nice, quiet neighborhood. We didn't come for businesses to start on the road. And I speak with all the other people here, and I was very offended by the last speaker. But he had his right to speak. And I'm what you call a transplant, basically. It's like I said, I came from another state. Pfizer goes up and down in size, EV goes up, down in size. Everybody goes up and down in size. You have to retain that too. They're not all gonna stay here, they're all gonna move, kids from here. You've really got to think about your zoning. This is not a good thing.
Thank you.
My name is Catherine Pratt and I live at 75 Front Street in Nowink. Chair Sutherland and members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, good evening. I appreciate this opportunity to express my opposition to the text amendment proposed by EG Home LLC and their attorney to amend the Town of Groton zoning regulations to allow open space common interest communities by special permit on parcels of 15 acres or more in R, RS, and RU zoning districts. This proposal would allow 2- and 3-unit dwellings in what are now single-unit districts and in other districts where they are not currently permitted, undermining a uniform system of land use regulation and potentially not conforming to the Plan of Conservation and Development, which states that new development should be compatible with what's existing. Additionally, it would allow commercial uses of up to 5,000 square feet in gross floor area in aggregate, limited only by the requirements that they are accessory or subordinate and primarily designed to meet the needs of residents. This phrasing could be broadly interpreted, potentially allowing for high traffic uses that create noise or parking issues or otherwise clash with the current residential zoning restrictions of the area. Permitted commercial uses, if any, should be clearly defined in the text amendment to better ensure that they are compatible with the underlying zone. As initially pointed out by Elisa Wright in her letter to the Planning and Zoning Commission of April 14th, and again this evening, once an application for a special permit has been filed, the discretion of the commission is constrained by the zoning regulations in place at that time. For example, if an application for a special permit for a certain commercial use in an open space common interest community meets all of the conditions set forth in the proposed section 6.6, the commission will have limited discretion to deny it. There has been little focus on the overall implications of the proposed text amendment for community character or the character of the town at large. I encourage you to consider the long-term ramifications of potentially running water and sewer lines to some of the sites eligible to take advantage of this proposal that do not currently have municipal service, such as, for example, the 80-acre tract of farmland near the intersection of Sandy Hollow Road and Noank Ledger Road, and to consider the effects on other large and as yet undeveloped properties in the general environs. It is also important to consider the possible consequences of the addition of commercial uses as amenities to the residents of a development in that location, as these may establish a precedent for the introduction of other commercial uses in what is essentially a rural area. If this text amendment is adopted, the neighbors whose zone could be changed will be at a disadvantage. While I do not believe it technically fits the definition of a floating zone regulation, it conjures up a floating zone scenario in the sense that a 15+ acre densely packed development with multi-unit dwellings and unspecified commercial uses could theoretically plunk down in any single or two-family residential zone throughout the town if certain general standards are met. Among the stated aims of the proposed text amendment are to increase housing variety and promote imaginative designs, but the price of such changes may be paid for by adjacent and nearby property owners who bought into their neighborhoods with the expectation of stability. I respectfully urge you to vote no on this proposal. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
Ian Thomas, 24 Jefferson Drive, and full disclosure, I am a member of the Board of Education, also spouse of a town councilor. But I'm here speaking primarily as a private citizen. I agree with pretty much everyone that's spoken against this text amendment. I don't think it's many of the reasons have already been articulated, but what really bothers me and troubles me, and I think should concern this commission, is the timing. We do have a POCD that is in development right now, and this sort of text amendment could, work count could. It's like the cart leading the horse, right? The cart full of horse type situation where it's may or may not align with what's coming in the POCD. That draft is still being discussed. In fact, this Thursday, there's a public hearing on that draft POCD that's at 5:30 in the town council chambers. And that public hearing is going to carry on for another 3 or 4 days after that, on the 28th and into June 6th, on June 4th and June 18th, I believe. So there's a whole process. The POCD should be guiding the text amendment, not the text amendment guiding the POCD. And it sounds like the town council just, the Planning and Zoning Commission had recommended some pieces be taken out of the POCD draft. Sounds like the town council is trying to put those back in. So that's another concern. So I would encourage anyone that's concerned about this situation to also engage with the draft POCD hearings, look up on the town website. Now, I do commend the idea of entrepreneurship and the idea of developments coming into town. However, I'm a firm believer in adaptive reuse. Open space cannot be reclaimed once it's gone, as my wife stated earlier tonight. We have MTC zones that are mixed use town, mixed mixed town center, and MVC zones on Long Hill Road and Route 12 area that are vastly underdeveloped at this point, but they're already paved. They already have infrastructure. They already have sewer, water, all the electricity, all that stuff. They're just single-story retail areas. They even have retail spaces on the ground floor. I would encourage any developer that is so inspired enough, motivated enough to try to spend the money on adding text amendments and all that. I would encourage them to look at the areas that already are developed and maybe need to be redeveloped and developed into a mixed village, mixed use areas where you have commercial on the ground floor and residential. I can't imagine anyone complaining about 3 or 4 stories going up on top of the old banks. Right? It's already paved. It's already being used, in fact, being underused at this point. And the merchants that are there, the businesses that are there, I'm sure would welcome with open arms as far as like people living there. And it's already designed, it's already ready, that has the capacity to absorb high density development. So I would discourage this commission from, moving forward with this text amendment. Do what you have to do. I don't think it's appropriate procedurally, with the POCD still in development. And I would encourage EG Homes to maybe take a look around at some other zones that that could be developed and would not require any text amendments to be redeveloped. And that side of town would definitely enjoy that sort of investment. So and again, like I do align I'm aligned with many people that have already spoken in far more greater detail than I can put out here as to like why the other troubling aspects of this testimony. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Elizabeth Henry. I reside at 83 High Street. I am opposed to the EG Home LLC's proposed text amendment, and I concur with most of my neighbors, with the exception of course, Kevin Blackford, who spoke earlier tonight. Just to make it brief, of course, Groton should absolutely plan for future housing needs, but growth should be directed toward areas that are better suited to absorb it, including underused retail corridors, mixed-use commercial districts, redevelopment sites, and areas where infrastructure already exists. That is smart planning. You've heard about the 15-minute city. Let's make Groton a 15-minute city. Expanding development pressures into rural areas, farmlands, wetlands, forests, and scenic routes is not smart planning. Equally concerning is the timing of this proposal. Groton, of course, is currently developing its new plan of conservation and development, which is expected to be released in the fall. That plan is intended to guide the town's long-term growth and conservation priorities. Moving forward with sweeping zoning changes before that process is complete is a waste of town resources and is premature and undermines the thoughtful planning that's gone into the POCD. I respectfully urge the commission to reject this amendment until the POCD is finalized and residents have had full opportunity to evaluate its long-term consequences. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Marshall, 118 Pearl Street. I'm opposed to the zoning text amendment for open space common interest communities. The reasons that I'm opposed are threefold. First, the timing is wrong. Second, it does not adequately address the objectives that are laid out in Attorney Sweeney's reasons for the amendment request during his analysis of consistency with the town's plan of conservation and development. Third, it does not directly address the town's need for affordable housing, the missing middle housing. The timing is wrong. As many have said, the plan of conservation development hasn't yet been approved. The climate action plan is also not even, it's at a later stage, and my understanding was that was originally going to be blended in with the plan of conservation development, but it was on a slower track. So it's a separate document, but it can't be ignored. When these documents are accomplished and are completed and approved, the Planning and Zoning Commission then is tasked to update regulations to conserve important natural resources. That's from the Plan of Conservation and Development, recommendation 2-4 cited in Attorney Sweeney's analysis. So at that point, the Planning and Zoning Commission's job is to integrate the Plan of Conservation Development, its associated Climate Action Plan, and should not ignore the 2025 Open Space Conservation Plan. integrating those into the Groton zoning regulations. The open space conservation plan, what I've not heard people talk about, we look at development in the future, it's so important that it be low impact development. It can be dense, but low impact development is important. That includes working with the natural landscape, the hydrology, and unique features of a site to avoid water pollution and environmental degradation, reducing the amount of impervious surface, being compatible with plans to connect open space and trail networks to complete and expand green belts, emphasize native flora, the importance of trees, and approving a new condominium community at this time that sets aside some open space, but that open space, it can't have houses on it, but it can be completely paved over with recreational amenities. It can have lawns with frequent applications of toxic chemicals. Does not seem like a good idea. The Planning and Zoning Commission is going to have a lot of work to do. This new proposal is presented as a minor variation of the existing open space subdivision, and that category itself may need a lot of work, a lot of revision. So, in my opinion, let the Planning and Zoning Commission do its work, and meanwhile, developers can work within the existing regulations. Secondly, my second objection, in my opinion, the amendment does not adequately address the goals, the important goals that Attorney Sweeney has laid out. He talks about respecting the physical qualities of the land and reducing the overall land disturbance. But there's nothing in this amendment that prevents a developer from bulldozing a lot of the land, flattening the landscape and taking down most of the trees. He mentions Plan of Conservation Development Recommendation 2-9, revises zoning and subdivision regulations to increase open space and recreation requirements and provides standards for improvements. I don't see much in the way of standards for improvements in this proposed amendment. He mentions Plan of Conservation Development Recommendation 3-15. Revise open space subdivision regulations to provide more flexibility, development types, and lot configurations to protect sensitive land. There is nothing in the amendment about identifying what land is most sensitive and how it should be protected. It's totally subjective. He also mentions the Plan of Conservation Development's recommendation to encourage the missing middle housing system. That's my third objection. There's no requirement to provide any missing middle housing. I would like to see a minimum percentage and to have no time limit for its remaining as affordable housing. In closing, I will emphasize that Attorney Sweeney last month said and said again tonight that these things were not being specified in order to give the developer maximal flexibility, and it was up to the commission to decide things like whether green spaces should be connected for a particular project and so on. I think that's poor policy. My concern is that when an attorney, an architect, and a developer show up before a commission and give their very professional presentations, which of course is their professional duty to only discuss and emphasize the positive points. And when that's done with very complex projects, it's easy for them to overwhelm the commission or enough of it, such as they don't adequately dig into to see all the negatives associated with it. I have seen this happen over and over again in several towns over time. Commissions can be strong and knowledgeable one year and not as strong in another year. The risk is simply too great. Accordingly, there needs to be a clear set of rules that apply to all projects that the commission can easily follow. A good set of rules does allow the developer, if these are a really good set of rules, it really does allow the developer flexibility to be creative and to do beautiful, unique work, or even just simple work that people love to live in. The bottom line is that having a good set of rules that the developer must adhere to with criteria that are objective as much as possible, not subjective, is just good practice.
Thank you.
Paul Bates, 47 Church Street, Chairman, member of the commission. Thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. My concern is that this proposal could be as clear and straightforward as it possibly can be. Most of you, some of you probably won't be on the commission in 10 years, and probably most of you won't be here in 20 years. And if you leave things as gray as they've been proposed in so many areas, there's no telling where this could end up. Specifically, very offended with a perversion of terms and a misuse of terms. There is no open space in this proposal. These were called amenities in the past. If you can disturb 100% of the lot, there is no open space left. Why would you use the term lot so many times in this proposal when the attorney told us that there are no lot and no lot line? Specifically on table 6.6, he said this was the same requirement as in the open space subdivision. I'd ask you to go back and look at the open space subdivision. There were 3 columns there. There are only 2 here. The section that talks about commercial uses on the property is exceedingly too general and glib. People in 20 years will have no idea what your intentions were at this time. Why couldn't someone take a 60-acre plot, cut it up into 4 pieces? Each one will be a 15-acre subdivision, and put a 5,000 square foot commercial building on each one of them. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak to the commission? Okay.
So do you want to ask if anyone online wants to speak?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Let's forget to look to the right. So, yes, is there anyone online that would like to speak? Please raise your hand on your Zoom. Yeah, maybe we should go down and.
I'm looking, yeah.
Yeah, all the way down.
I don't, yeah, they usually pop up at the top when they.
Do they? Okay.
Yeah, so I don't see anyone on there.
Okay, all right, thank you. So at this point, the next thing would be for the applicant, Attorney Sweeney has the right to speak here. The rebuttal.
I'll be very brief.
You do?
Thank you for
Thank
the
you.
time tonight and the time last month, and thank you for all the public speakers tonight. I want to remind the commission that there was a lot of testimony regarding specific projects at specific locations. I made myself very clear in the record that testimony should not be accepted into the record. Commission can choose to allow it, but it shouldn't be part of your considerations whatsoever. If it did, it would be an error in your deliberations, and I know the commission understands the law on that, so I'm sure you'll disregard specific projects and specific. But there are many comments that were legitimate comments, and that those ones certainly can be considered in your deliberations. I also want to encourage the commission to remember your powers to approve, to deny, and to modify. The commission specifically asked EG Home to provide some possible modifications, which we did. but you're not limited to the possible modifications that I've provided. I want to remind the commission that in our earliest workshops on this text amendment, we came in with a much higher minimum acreage, and that was actually reduced to 15 acres at the suggestion of the commission to allow this tool to be used more widely and broadly. The commission may choose, after hearing some of this testimony, to increase that minimum acreage. You're certainly within your right. What you can't do is decrease it below 15. That would make it less restrictive. You can always make it more restrictive. Similarly, the initial proposals did not have what we call the triplex or the multi-unit housing option or the accessory dwelling unit options. Those were both added with the desire to create a greater diversity of housing opportunities, a greater diversity of potential more affordable, or the term I like to use these days, attainable housing opportunities in these projects. There are certain locations where these types of uses may be totally appropriate. There may be uses that they're in locations where it's totally not appropriate. That's why there is a special permit process that lays out in the regulations for any such open space common interest community. The special permit process is the highest level of discretion that this commission possesses for an administrative application. So I want to make sure that the commission is aware of that. And finally, on the issue of commercial, we went back and forth. We expressed our concerns about the commercial. It was something that the commission asked us to look at. We modified it at least 3 or 4 times. You can modify it again. You can make the decision that it's too much commercial, that commercial has no place in this regulation. We are absolutely fine if it's the decision of the commission. Again, we thought there was an opportunity there to create some really interesting live spaces that have resources that are subordinate and incidental, not principal uses. You can't take 60 acres and split it up into 4 parcels and do 4 or 5,000 unit 5,000 square foot commercial. You still have to have the residential community as the principal use, only accessory and subordinate. But again, the commission has the right to strip that from this proposal, to modify it, to tweak it, put more restrictions on it, to limit it to certain underlying zones. You have that power throughout. So I just want to remind you of the power that you have in your legislative deliberations. I'm just going to say a lot of the comments that were made were repetitive of last month's meeting, but there's a couple I just want to touch on, and then I'm going to sort of wrap up. Mr. Baravecchia commented that we really need a process that evaluates projects on a case-by-case basis. I couldn't agree with him more. And that's why we have a special permit built in this, which I would point out, and I think is a very important distinction, is very different than the open space subdivision regulations, which are in effect right now, that somebody could come into any property in town that qualifies and use, where you would have to evaluate that proposal on a subdivision standard, the legal standard in a subdivision. If you meet the subdivision requirements, you are required to give an approval. Special permit increases dramatically the level of discretion and allows you to weigh and balance the positives of the project against the mitigants or the issues of the adversity that you may cause to the surrounding area. So I think that's a really important point, and I think the special permit does exactly what Mr. Baravecchia was talking about. I do want to address Mr. Baumgartner's comments. The common open space areas would not be sort of put aside willy-nilly. We put into the regulations the requirement as part of the submission of a disposition plan, where we have to actually propose to the commission the areas of the site that are going to be put into common open space. Will they be passive? Will they be active? Will they be public? Will they be private? And actually give you an analysis of why we're picking these areas. And that's part of our special permit approval. If you feel that our areas are inappropriate, they should be larger, there should be greater connectivity to adjacent open space. Those are all part of your analysis and your power. That doesn't exist in the open space subdivision regulations. That's a much more enhanced and much more discretionary approval process for the commission. There was also a comment that the sewer avoidance areas, some of the 15-acre sites that popped up on the map that your staff provided are in the sewer avoidance area. Remember, under this regulation, you can't use this tool unless you have sewer and water. If you're a sewer avoidance area, you can't extend sewer. So those parcels should be removed from that map for those purposes alone. So there's no intent to try to undermine the sewer avoidance areas as mapped out right now. Certainly issues in agricultural impact. It's one of the changes I made. I think there are properties that might be eligible where there could be some great agricultural land or agricultural heritage that's preserved as part of a development. I think we could really create some really interesting and really exciting types of preserved common open space along with housing opportunities. Environmental impact and the connectivity of open spaces. I think this regulation is all about trying to make sure that we create connectivity, that we have connections between open space areas. And Ron's done a tremendous job, and I know Gosha's done a tremendous job in preserving open space in this community. This proposal allows for properties that might be in between some of these areas or adjacent or in proximity to these areas to add to sort of that connection of green areas that are protected in town. I want to just reiterate again, these are not garden apartment rental projects like Triton Square. These are common interest ownership communities. These are communities where actually home ownership is baked in to the actual structure of these. So I think there was a couple comments about not having home ownership. They may not be the type of homes on standalone single family lots, but they're certainly homes, and it's all about home ownership, this proposal. Mr. Pritchard spoke briefly. I have great respect for Chairman Pritchard. He talked about Chapter 828, which is the Common Interest Community Act. That is the governance of the community. Certainly the regulation, your authority does not go into dealing with who owns particular units. You do not deal with who the occupants are. We're talking about the governing structure. He made some comments that there's still lots. There aren't still lots. That's not how it works. It would be a single lot, and then that lot would be governed by a common interest community with individual units. And those units are fully customizable. They could be just the limits of a building, or they could be the limits of the building and a back patio area or an accessory dwelling unit next door to it. So you can really customize those, but they're not lots. And that's what's really important. There is no application of individual lot standards. There's one lot that covers the entire property, and you have multiple principal buildings within it. That's why if you go to the definitions, we had to change the definition of 1 unit and 2 unit dwellings, because they say you can only have one of those on a property. Well, except under this type of an arrangement, you can have multiple in this type of governance that's set out in the general statutes. The density, I know this came up time and time again. Take a look. I encourage you to take a look at the regulation of the open space subdivision and the open space common interest community. The same density standards are literally lifted from it. Is there two columns instead of 3? Yeah, because we don't have individual lots. That third column doesn't make sense. But it's the same density, absolutely the same. But we have much greater standards. There's no architectural design control in an open space subdivision. There's no comprehensive landscape plan. There's no common open space standards that require, as we're proposing now, 25%. None of that exists. So it's a much higher standard. And so it's the same density altogether. Former Chairman Pritchard also said, why don't we have just one open space regulation? Well, that's how we started. We wrote this originally as a single regulation. We were going to amend the open space subdivision provision to allow open space subdivisions and open space common interest communities. But your staff, very wisely, Deb Jones said, I see a problem with that. Why? Because open space subdivisions are governed as subdivisions under your powers as a planning commission, where an open space common interest community, there aren't multiple lots. It would be governed under a special permit. And she said, those are 2 different standards. She said, you really should split these into 2 separate sister proposals. They sit side by side. One is governed by subdivision in your planning role. One is governed by special permit in your zoning role. That's why we have 2. So we did start with one regulation. We split it because there's different legal standards for evaluating it. Another comment that came up is biological issues on properties, not any specific property, or archaeological issues. Today in Connecticut, for a general stormwater permit, the DEP requires for disturbance of up to 5 acres of land, or more than 5 acres of land. There is a mandatory requirement for a natural diversity database screen, and then ecological studies, as well as an archaeological study, phase 1A archaeological study, and if there's any potential, then it goes to a phase 1B. So issues of archaeological or biological issues would be dealt with at the state level through the general stormwater permit process, regardless of what your regulations say. And that applies not just to these projects, but any major development project in town is going to be governed by those same standards. I don't think I really need to respond to anything else. I just want to finish with a couple ideas. The law says that you are to consider your existing POCD and your existing comprehensive plan for zoning, which is your zoning code and your zoning map, read together, which is in effect at the time of the application in evaluating our consistency with it. That's what the law says, and that's your standard. I know that towns are often working on plans, they're often in different phases of plan work, but the law says you have to use what you have right now that's on the books. I would note, and I think one of the speakers pointed out, that your existing plan tells you as a goal of this commission is to look at your open space subdivision regulations and look at revising them to add more flexibility. Well, that's exactly what we tried to do. Now, it is a sister regulation and it sits next to it. The whole idea of this was to try to take the basis of your open space subdivision, bring it into modern day and allow for creativity and flexibility. And that's what we did. Finally, tonight, if the commission chooses to defeat or to deny this application, that doesn't stop development of any of the R, RS, or RV zones. Today, if you own a property in any of those zones, you can come in and build a house with a simple zoning permit. You don't have to come before this commission with a zone to build a single house. If you wanted to do a subdivision and build individual lots, you do have to come before you into this commission. But again, you're governed by subdivision law then. If you meet all the requirements for bulk and dimensional standards, if all the road standards are built, you don't have a lot of discretion. You have to give an approval. Today, all of the same properties that are impacted by this proposal are also eligible for the open space subdivision at the same density that we're proposing, but none of the architectural controls, none of the additional landscaping, none of the additional controls. If you compare the two regulations that I urge you to do, look at how more supple and how more significant our proposed regulation is than the old original open space subdivision. What the open space common interest community regulation does, it doesn't change the density. It makes sure that you get quality open space. It makes sure that there's design thought put into the layout and for the open space set asides. It has architectural controls on the buildings. There's none of that in the open space subdivision. And again, it's all by special permit. The highest level of discretion and power that this commission can wield on the administrative level. I think it's a good tool to put in the toolbox. Is it the solution to every problem in Groton? No, there's no silver bullets. And I heard people say, well, we need to look at our undeveloped or underutilized commercial space. Yeah, we do. And we need to look for more opportunities for affordable housing, attainable housing. We need to look at climate resiliency. There's a whole bunch of things that we need to do. Natural resource protection. It's just one tool in the toolbox. I think it's a very reasonable one, be very creative, but at the end of the day, you sit in your legislative capacity. You have a lot of power to approve, deny, or I hope to modify this with some of the things we talked about to make it the best tool possible. I also remind you as a final point, zoning regulations change. They're not static. So if you put something through and you feel like you need to change it or tweak it later, nothing that prevents the commission from doing that. So thank you for your time. I really do appreciate it. Obviously, if you do take extra testimony, I reserve the right to rebuttal, but I really don't want to make any more comments. Thank you.
I think we'll take a short break at this time. Okay.
How about a long one?
15-minute break.
No, I don't need 15 minutes.
Oh.
Whatever you
Okay with
think,
that?
yeah.
Everybody's okay.
Time,
10? Okay, we'll compromise 10.
9:21, 9:24. That's 4 minutes fast. So it's 9:21, so we're back, 9:22. We're back.
I got 9:24 from Lord Apple. So
Okay.
9:34?
We'll just do that.
Lord
Yeah,
Apple.
9:34.
9:34.
34.
So, Finance and Commission back in session. Now, there would usually be the decision to continue, not to continue. And I'm gonna be looking to staff for a lot of ideas, as it were. And if you want, we could go ahead and have the commission
So you're here,
talk, but I kind of don't have the framework.
Yeah,
of
no, I mean, your
what's
hearing is
the
still
end
open.
game.
Your
Yeah.
hearing is still open, right?
Yeah.
So if you have enough information to start a discussion and you have enough to evaluate what this application is, you can go ahead and close it. And after that,
Right.
when you get to that point on the agenda, you can discuss.
Right, okay. That's where I'm, I'll let everyone else, have your say, but me personally, this is where I'm coming out with this, and this is, you know, when we first had the presentation, I really liked the idea, the concept, and I think there's much of potential benefit in this. But as it stands right now, I think it needs really a lot more work. I think,
So,
okay,
so if you need additional information, you
Yeah.
could ask for it, but discussing it should come after the hearing's closed.
okay. Well, what I would need for information would be a cleaner version that would have all the missing parts in it that I see. Okay, I mean, something major. I'm not talking about small edits. There are errors in there, other problems, so. The other thing I'm not clear about, why we need to do this right away, that would be a question, because to me, the timing speaks very loudly. Oh, let's try, I'll speak into this better. The timing, it's not just the POCD, which is very important, of course, that we don't know if the POCD is going to take another week or month or whatever, but there could be a lot of hearings and there could be a lot of changes. We don't know. There's also the fact, our main goal, and I see this as the main theme, as it were, of the POCD that's being drafted now, is really to address better our housing, particularly missing middle. Whereas this application is really, to me, for upper middle class housing. And there is nothing wrong with upper middle class housing. But when you take every vacant parcel theoretically will be available to put that on there, then that almost forces you to start saying, okay, where on earth are we going to put these EV workers, on-hold workers, et cetera? And trying to come up with an answer to that. I haven't heard that yet. I've asked a lot. We don't have a plan, I don't think, for missing middle housing. But by the end of the year, we should have a lot more information, as I understand it. We should have even design standards and all. So we'd have some better idea on what's this going to look like, where could it be, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that would fit well. Okay, given that maybe is our number one priority, then where does the upper middle class housing fit, right? And if anybody wants to disagree with my definition of that, I will just say, the housing prices being quoted as 500,000 to say 1 million in a typical development. We're not going to say where or anything. That is just a base price. When you do the add-ons in one of EG's own publications, the $1 million house was $1.3 million and change, right? And I think it's hard to argue with the fact that you're not talking about really the middle class at that point. The Wall Street Journal had an interesting analysis showing that, in fact, the old middle class is shrinking a lot. It's kind of going away. The upper middle class is growing. And of course, as we all know, the very rich are growing also. So the good news is maybe the lower income classes are, there's less there. That's where it's coming out of. So it's having a positive effect. Apparently, some of these people are moving up into the middle class or above. And apparently over time, a lot of the middle class, as we know, sometimes because of 401ks, people, whatever, through a very good stock market period, they've accumulated a lot. And you have a much bigger band now of people that are in that category. So anyway, back to where we are, though, we need to ask ourselves, okay, if our goal is really finding housing for the people who are working in our town, we really need so much more information on what that's gonna look like, where it could be and all. And this brings me really to my last point. Some of the proposals, like on the future land use map and other things, have really talked about increasing density. And I use the word density, and it could be incorrectly. I would say increasing the number of units. For example, on the R12 zones, or most of the zones across town. We're not talking about vacant land, 15 acres. We're talking about our zoning categories across town. And somehow we would be increasing units on these various parcels of land. And to me, and I could be wrong, doing something like that, it's not like putting up a Triton Square where you say, okay, I have a school, I have this much land, I could throw up this, I got all of a sudden 350 people renting here. You know, that's relatively easy. If you're looking, how are you going to come up with affordable housing for a EB worker, something they can actually live in and afford? Where are you really going to put it? How does that really work when you have people owning all these plots across town? To me, it just seems messy on the onset. But I think, you know, understanding more about that is really important to understand how this next step up fits in too. And just as a last thing, I was surprised by how many people came out for this public hearing. I think it's really a good thing. It shows incredible interest. And remember, this is a potential change, which most of them are probably not even living with or near, other than, you know, there were some here, but a lot of people from Noank, whatever, are not even affected by this. But it's like, if we get to the point where we need to also increase density across town, I think we really have to think long and hard on how is it going to sell, right? I think it's a huge challenge. I think, I'm sure we're all interested. I mean, all of us would like to see more housing in town, but I think all these things are related. So that's why I'm reluctant to do anything as far as moving this forward, because the timing's not good. And so many other things are not really set in place. Once things are set in place, I would support looking at this again, for sure, at the right time.
So are we having discussion or?
Yeah, no, we're not. That's what I'm saying. And you're getting deep into discussion. So now we just have to decide if we have more information we want to ask them.
Right. Or staff, right?
Or staff, so they get through the information. And then
I can talk to you after the hearing, but
That's correct.
closes.
Yeah, but the information I was asking for was really timing things. And that's why I was talking with staff, because staff knows when missing middle's coming in better than the rest of us do, when that might be ready in the other stuff.
well, it won't be this week. So
That's my point. Of course it's not. Yeah,
but
yeah.
Can I ask staff? So can we just clarify with the May 19th date, we have to act by that date?
This hearing must close by May 19th. Once it closes, you have 65 days in which to make a decision.
Yeah, so we don't have to make a decision tonight, but isn't the other thing that Attorney Sweeney, if he wanted to, could ask to extend
I'm
the,
not able. And
okay,
we've been, as you know, we've been working with this last fall, and we have extended multiple times
right?
to get the text changes. We're at the end of ours. In fact, that's on variety of contracts that we have.
Sure, no, it's good to know.
From our perspective, I think it was some really good spirited debate, and I respect people's differing opinions and positions on it. My feeling is we would ask the commission to close the public hearing and then take whatever action you deem appropriate, whether it's acting tonight, whether it's working with your staff on additional modifications or edits or clarifications. And then obviously we'd love to have a decision in the affirmative tonight. But you know, if you really do have what Deb said is absolutely correct. You have to close it by the 19th. You really have to close it tonight.
No, I understand that.
Yeah,
That's what we're,
but you get to decide. There's statutory.
no, I understand. That's what we're in the process of doing. So, okay, thank you. Okay, anyone?
So I'd like to ask a question, of Attorney Sweeney. So unfortunately, I was out of the country. I didn't hear your full reply, but, I heard this evening, and I don't know if I don't believe it's correct, but I'm not predisposed that, about the text amendment and a particular developer. My understanding is that text amendments typically, whether it's yourself, another land use attorney, just about anyone can bring up what they see potentially is a gap in a zoning framework and can bring it up. And am I wrong there? Or?
No, you're absolutely right. I talked about it at the last meeting too.
Right. Which I just didn't get it fully. Sorry.
Yeah, several speakers said they were sort of offended that the attorney would propose a change to the town's regulations, but that's the very nature of zoning, because that anyone who has an ownership interest, even a contractual interest in a piece of property, has standing to bring a proposal before you change it. And I told the story last time that there's a town that's across the river where a former chairman continually submits every couple of months, he submits changes and they're summarily denied. But he has every right to do that. The commission must evaluate them and take them under consideration and has to publish them and hold a public hearing. That's the nature of zoning. So I do this, I would say half of what I do is actual development projects, and the other half is proposing regulations. I've been before you probably a dozen times with ideas on trying to make regulations better or more workable. So yeah, so that's, I hope that answers your question.
It does. Thank you.
Any other thoughts?
I hear that you're looking for information about when the next study will come out. From my understanding is that regardless if we continue in a week and then set off the 65 days, or we close the hearing tonight and then set off the 65 days for consideration, both the POCD and the middle house, none of that's going to be ready anyways. So I guess I'm just thinking for myself, I believe I have modifications I would request, but I don't think there's any additional information I need in order for my consideration. So I'm not opposed to closing the hearing tonight and beginning our 65-day deliberation period. I'm also not opposed to continuing it one way or the other. It's next Tuesday, which I don't think we have a regularly scheduled meeting for anyways.
You don't, but there are no rooms available, so it would have to be the 18th if you are considering continuing it.
So I'm not opposed to either, but I am also prepared to begin deliberations because I don't believe there's any more additional information that we could be given. Though I always want to leave opportunities for the public because there seems to be a keen public interest.
Absolutely.
So
yes.
I'm for one of same milk. I'm fine with closing it now, especially since we do have as part of our deliberations the power to make it more restrictive and come up with more restrictions, which is the only thing we would think of doing. Then I think we have all the information we need to go forward with deliberations. And that's 2 months, so we've got plenty of time.
Yeah.
Sorry,
go ahead.
quick process question. We had them present potential modifications before. Are we still able to do that? Or would we need to continue the hearing to do?
You would have to continue the hearing if you want to see additional changes. Exactly.
And really, you're not supposed to use your staff as a conduit for ex parte.
Exactly.
And that's really not appropriate, but your staff can certainly come up with ideas or share ideas with you. That's totally allowable. I can't, or my client can't, but that also goes for the public. Like, members of the public can't reach out to you. They can't grab you in the supermarket and say, hey, you really should do this or that. You gotta sort of you're like judges, you have to sort of sit and just focus on the record with the support of your staff.
Right.
But if you had changes that you'd be interested in seeing, if Attorney Sweeney had the time to turn it around by Monday, I mean, that you could keep the hearing open to get that.
Okay. So I'd be interested in that.
A clarification. So in order for Attorney Sweeney to do that, but between May 19th and 65 days, can we have that conversation with you to modify?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, then.
Got it.
Is there an opportunity, because I wasn't at that, I thought and I didn't get to ask any questions.
Yeah, if you want to ask.
Yeah.
This would be
The hearing is
last
open.
chance.
Yeah, no, I realize, but they're
The worst.
totally
the worst
like
thing possible that
off,
happens
you know, they're
multiple
gonna
times with
under all the.
submissions is people close the hearing and then we go, yeah, I wish I asked the.
Right, yeah, no. Okay, so I mean, when I was watching the video tonight, so I have two things I'm a little bit mixed up about. So the building is owned and deeded to an individual.
Yeah, so. Get up. So in a common interest community, the actual dwelling unit. Would be actually in singular ownership of an individual or an entity that would be separate and apart from everyone else.
So I own unlike a condominium where I only own to the sheetrock.
Well, it's totally customizable, so you can define the limits of what's called the unit within the common interest community. Any way you want, for example, and I say that because it could be just the four walls of the unit, but it could also include a patio out back that's yours and yours private. And you don't share it with anyone else. We talked about the idea of accessory dwelling units, like you may have a detached unit right behind your unit, and that's within the envelope of your personal control. So you can define it any way you want.
Who's you?
The owner.
The owner.
The owner.
Okay, all
And
right.
then everything outside of those unit boundaries is owned commonly among all the unit owners and governed by an executive board formed by those unit owners who oversee the development and care for all the common areas, often the amenity spaces.
Okay, but like things like a repair that needs to be made, a roof that needs to be replaced.
Yeah.
That's mine.
Typically it is, unless it's defined differently. So,
Okay.
you know, you might, for instance, have a sidewalk, space with a sidewalk going up. That's covered by the organization, you know, the governing organization.
All right.
Very customizable.
Like I said, is Bishop's Cove exactly this in Stonington? You don't know?
Well, I'm not.
It sounds like it's the exact same thing because those are.
It's used, it's
I don't
used,
know that. I've been there.
Everybody knows that? Goodness.
it's used.
And it's around wetlands and it does all these things, so.
This,
I know that.
I don't want anybody to think that this is some groundbreaking thing that I came up with. This is.
No.
It's just it's a really flexible way to be able to separate the private and the common space. And be able to do some really interesting designs.
The neighbor of
We
mine.
showed it in those workshops.
The only other thing was, Deb, you had mentioned invisible lot line.
Right,
That's what I'm talking about.
exactly.
So who draws those?
We do, the developer does in their declaration of common interest community, which must be submitted with our site plan. In section 665, right underneath table 6.6, it says no development of land under this section shall take place unless the land is made subject to a declaration of a common interest community under chapter 828 of.
And so those are documents that are held by the association, not in the town clerk's office.
No, they're filed on the town clerk's
okay,
record.
all right.
And EG Home would form that and lay that all out. They would then offer those units for sale as they construct them, and then at a certain point set by the state law, the association would take over control. And then they would run the thing and take it over from the developer, and EG would part and they would leave. And then the association governs the development.
And then how much control does a person have in that space? Can I put up a fence
Yeah, so.
to keep my dog in or someone else's dog?
So the association then adopts rules and regulations governing the common interest community in terms of what you can do within the common interest community. A lot of common interest communities have rules about signage or flags or pets or within your invisible lot line, what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do.
Yeah, but you're buying into that.
You know it, and there's a public offering statement, so you know exactly what you're getting, so everybody knows how.
Would it be fair to call this an HOA?
It's a homeowners association, yes, but it's formed under section
A different
828.
section, yes, yeah.
Rather than the typical homeowner association where you might see like,
So it's not a new concept.
it's not a new concept at all. And in fact, it's really strictly governed. So I think I talked about before, like the board has to have error of emissions insurance.
Yeah.
You have to have your financial statements audited, like there's
Mhm.
rules about it, so you can't abuse the situation either, and there's oversight.
Thank you.
I do have one more question
I
for
do.
you. Okay, say you have 50 acres.
Yeah.
And then you have additional acres making your open space portion, whatever you decide that to be.
Yeah.
You know, but you have 50 acres you can build on. How many, what's the maximum number of units you could put on that 50 acres?
It's a good question. So first, you would turn.
If you could use every single ounce of, triplex, whatever.
What's in the limestone?
Oh, good question. How,
Important, because you have.
yeah.
You have to use the table.
wait, could we do it for, well, let's see. I don't know. Could we do it for like, where the major zones are,
I
not
mean,
sure.
it's gotta be an RS or an RU.
So maybe
Pick
that's
one.
not too bad.
Pick
Well,
one.
what if we do it for all?
RS 12, that's what we mostly have, right?
So RS
Well,
12,
you don't have 15 acres, do you?
On RS 12?
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good one. So
Yeah.
do we have a matrix that shows of the 15 acres where that fits?
Or even more than,
specific-
well, we'd have to have at least 50 acres.
I thought this was hypothetical.
Yeah, it is hypothetical.
You've got 50 acres.
Yeah,
and the
50.
RS 12, right?
Yeah, no, I
Combine that
don't, I
in.
don't want RS 12. I want RS like 20, whatever.
RU something.
Yeah.
Are you 20 and it's a field?
Yeah,
yeah. So you have to first take what's the gross area. So you said 20, you already have your 25%.
right.
Aside, so.
Yep.
You have your 25% aside. I have to calculate more than 30 acres. It's.
But if you want to get back on this,
No,
you don't have to know tonight.
I mean, I can do the math for you, but I mean, I think the issue is let's do it simple. Let's say you have 50 acres just total. You haven't set aside any open space yet, all right? And so the first question would be, let's say it's the RS 20, all right? So its minimum lot area per dwelling unit is 10,000 square feet. So the RS, you said we have 50 acres. You times that by 43,560, so that's a little bit over 2 million square feet. We divide that by 10,000. And that gives you 217 units on those 15 acres in the RS 20. That's your calculation for minimum lot area. Now the question becomes, how much of that is actual minimum usable lot area? So of the 50 acres, we said, how much of it is steep slopes, how much wetland?
No, I'm just gonna assume for this.
We're gonna say there's none.
That's
Right?
Iowa.
Perfect land, every square inch is developable. So the first number we have is 217.8.
Yep.
Or 217 units, you can't have a 0.8 of a unit. So we'll say there's no wetlands, there's no steep slopes, everything counts. So the minimal useful lot area per dwelling unit, we'll do the same thing, we'll do 50 acres, that's 43560, just over 2 million square feet. Now we divide it by 5,000 square feet. And that gives us 435 units. The section says you take the lesser of the two numbers. So the 435 is X out, you can do a total of 217 units on 50 acres of absolutely big, of perfect land to develop.
Okay, so just a question.
Yeah, so then 25% becomes open space.
25%, yeah, it's not spread out, but 25% of 50 would be open space. You'd have to do all the roads, you do your amenities.
That's
And
what
then-
happens every time you do a subdivision is
Yeah,
that
and
you
you're,
lose.
and you're probably not gonna get 217 units, but that's the maximum. You can't go above that. Yeah.
On
Is
50
RS
acres.
20 a good
What's that?
example?
50 acres, a huge lot
With no wetlands and no steep slopes, like perfect flat land.
versus the 300 plan for the 16-acre Pleasant Valley. Different unit type, but still, if we're talking, I mean, right,
Those are garden farming type.
Right, sure.
Style development, yes.
density.
But that example is why it's hard to answer the question, how much can you get? What is the density? Is it anymore?
But
It's very important,
Right.
though.
The
At least have a
illustration though
example.
was somewhat misleading because there is really no 50-acre piece that's like this. Why we have two columns is take that same situation, 50 acres. Well, let's say 45 of the acres is wetland. All right. So now all we have that's usable is 5 acres. So now we take 5 acres times 43.560 gives us 217,000 square feet. We divide that by 5,000 and you get 43 units. So on a heavily constrained parcel, the lower number now is going to be the minimum usable lot area. So it takes into account the carrying capacity of the land. It says you can't get 217 units on that. There's only 5 acres that don't fall within the steep slope wetland requirement. You're going to be cut back significantly in the number of units you can do.
And much of that is still in the open space subdivision regulation that's been on the books for 30 years.
It's the exact same
Right.
numbers. Yeah. If you can picture it, when you fly in like to an airport, down in the Midwest, especially like in Texas, and you look at just the tract subdivisions. I don't mean to be critical, but your open space subdivision regulations basically encourage people to take a chunk of land, take 20%, set it over here, and then cut that up like a pie, everything else. What I'm saying is that's not the way to develop. That doesn't look like Groton. Instead, get rid of all those lot lines. And now we can have little clusters of buildings, we can have common open space, we can have gardens in between, we have some amenity space. You're not stuck in that sort of track. I hate that track development mentality. Listen, I've got developers and clients who do that. And I might come before you with one of those in the near future, but if you can.
Should we bring that up at that time?
Yeah.
We'll bring that back to you, Bill.
You said that?
Yeah, yeah.
No, roll the tape. Yeah.
But I mean, we talked about this in the workshops of trying to allow some creativity and Deb's been really, I mean, Deb's been a tough negotiator in this because she's the one who said, listen, if you're gonna do this, the staff believes this should be by special permit, it should not be by site plan. The original proposal was this should be by site plan approval. And she said, nope, it needs to be by special permit because there needs to be the weighing of impact. And I think, quite frankly, if I was in her shoes, I would have probably said the same thing. We agreed to it, but we agreed as well.
No, you said, so you're up to 25% open space now?
That's what my.
Yeah, I didn't get that latest version. The one that was online when I picked it up had the earlier.
It's in your agenda packet.
Yeah. No. I guess it's correct.
And I just picked it up. at town.
Yeah.
But it was-
That's my question.
Yep.
Okay, so, although I watched everything, I'm pretty good at math, right?
Yeah.
Pretty good. And the point is, it seems to me, as we just walk through this exercise, one of the issues we have, and there's some, I'm just observing, I'm not judging, there's some fear and uncertainty and doubt here, right? And it mostly centers on density, right? And is there a way, and Deb, you may have something here too, that we can better explain that density, because it looks too amorphic to me. Everyone's like, it breeds that type of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Maybe we haven't answered that question as directly as we could. That's my only point.
And it's because it's built on a case by case basis, on the nature of the underlying zone, and then the actual physical capabilities of the property. Is it steep? Is it wet? What a great thing, like to actually set your density based on what the property can actually support. I mean, that's, you should be doing it. I think it's sort of a creative way, but for a lay person who doesn't work with planning and zoning all the time, it's like, oh, there's like, it's, something's going on behind the screen on how you do it. No, it's really, every site is going to be different. So you're going to get a calculation. We're going to say, this is the total number of acres. This is how much wetland we have. This is how much steep slope. We subtract those out. Here are the two calculations. You take the less, that's our max. Here's our project. As long as we don't go over the max, we can propose that at least. Doesn't mean you have to agree with it and approve it, but at least we can propose that.
But one other thing I think you really need, and that's a scale model, even just one simple 3D graphic scale model, whatever. No, you know why? It's a Triton Square. If people had seen how Triton Square was gonna look from where they lived, they would have been up in arms.
I think
That's all I keep.
They had
thinking about.
elevations that look.
Is that on?
I mean, seriously.
No, they
I think
seriously
it's
were.
Very helpful.
But I think
We were
The
ignored it.
nine, you see,
when you
doesn't
get to the
fit.
special permit stage,
Yeah.
that's exactly.
Well, no, but it's more than that, it's a sense of place, and that nebulous concept, I know a lot of people don't like to put in PLCDs, is in the current one, and it's still, as far as I know, in the draft one, so that sense of place, if you could say, this is what it's gonna look like to somebody who's living wherever, and they're concerned about that, I think it's it could be a good selling point, or tell you how to tweak things.
But you can't do that because this is just a text amendment.
Exactly.
That's right.
No.
You could ask for it, as
Yeah.
I said, during.
Right.
I think it would be in the developer's interest, whoever the developer is on whatever site.
I think-
I think so too.
Renderings. the whole
Yeah.
thing.
There's a gap here. There's a gap here that appears a lot of public interest is saying, I'm opposed to it because they can't see something like that. The text amendment is frankly a little amorphic. It looks fat. I don't understand what it is in some way. I'm just observing what the comment was.
And a lot of
They're not wrong. I'm not saying right or wrong, right?
Concerns about traffic, concerns about sewer, concerns about interruption of their privacy. Those are all valid concerns.
Right.
But they're valid concerns at the special permit stage. That would be my argument. And there's a public hearing process where they can participate in at that stage. And that's something that you guys have to consider.
Would it be impossible No, it would be very possible. Or to have, one of the things we've been saying is that they're saying, well, the existing zoning already allows someone to come in and turn this into an open space subdivision. We wouldn't be talking about this if it was. And what I was hearing from a lot of the people who are speaking is, I don't think they were aware of how many houses could show up in that. They were just, because that's, if we're going to keep about the same density.
And that was sort of tried in my close was, okay, so this gets denied, what happens then?
Yeah, and I'm not sure they got it, but one of the fears was, and was stated pretty well, is that I don't know if it could be a little bit more. And maybe the answer more simply is, if that's the big problem, is that one of the other limitations is you must show us that if you didn't, it's no more housing than it would be if it were an open space.
Oh, I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's the case.
But right now, it could be that.
That's kind of discussion though.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yes.
But that,
No, I'm asking if that's
Okay.
something that,
you could do it both ways, do one under current, then one under proposed. How many units would we have?
actually, I should have brought that into discussion because that would be a further limitation. So we could do it that way.
I want to thank you for your time. I know you guys have been really thoughtful about it and appreciate all the questions. Again, we'd ask that you close the public hearing tonight and make a decision when you feel appropriate to do it, whatever the decision is. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, there's no questions for the audience at this point. Oh, wait, we're not close.
No, we're not close yet.
That's right.
Still?
I'm sorry. You want to come up to the microphone? You'd have to introduce yourself again and give your address.
Paul Bates, right?
Yep, Paul Beats, the link.
47 Church Street. Didn't find it clear from the back of the room exactly when Attorney Sweeney was doing his calculations, but it appears that he never took out 25% for the open space when he was figuring the unit. So, is that correct?
No, he did. He
He
took
did
that
take it
into
out?
account, yeah. Thank you though for your question. Anybody else with any questions? It's never too late.
Like make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Okey doke. Passes. Okay, right. Next turn.
Deb, could you give us the last date, like the 65 days from now?
Exactly, yeah.
Thank you.
Countdown.
At the end of the meeting, not immediately,
Thank
but
you. Yes, I absolutely can do that.
thank you.
Also, I have a question. I know I couldn't ask a question in the public hearing. But now that it's closed,
Yeah.
who would be responsible for water and sewer? Is that the developer's responsibility?
So actually, yes, but actually it's now that alternates cannot
Yeah,
speak.
you can't speak.
Oh, alters can be.
Right, you
Remember, that's
could,
all-
during the hearing, you could have asked.
Oh,
Sorry.
I thought I didn't know I could ask during the hearing.
Annoying, but
Nope.
But if I go back to an alternate for the next meeting, I can't speak.
That
then,
is
even though I participated here.
That's correct.
we'll be watching. Okay.
Yep, to number 2. We have another public hearing.
Public hearing number 2.
Yes. You're planning on getting out of here, right?
I got
No.
Right? Shall I read?
Yes, I'm so.
Okay.
Yeah, forget people online. I can forget public hearings.
Good.
Get the
So
signal.
17 people.
Did you get?
July 16th.
Yep, me too.
So Lauren, 65 days, July 16th.
Great, thank you.
July 16th. Okay, great. Super. And our next meeting is still 2 weeks.
Yes.
Looks like a go and all that. Okay, great.
All right. Next.
Okay. Ready for me?
Yeah.
Good. Notice is hereby given that the following public hearing will be held on Tuesday, May 12th, 2026 at 7 p.m. at Community Room 2, Town Hall Annex 134 Groton Long Point Road, and virtually via the Zoom platform to hear the following zoning regulation amendment, REGA 26-0003, text amendment to add new section 5.1-9.c, restaurant drive-through. Amend section 2.1 general definitions to add definition of drive-through restaurant, amend table 4.1, table of permitted uses to allow drive-through restaurant in the MTC and CR district by special permit with conditions, and amend table 8.2-4 parking space requirements to add drive-through restaurant as a new category under restaurants, bars, and clubs. DTB Groton LLC, applicant William Sweeney, applicant. A Zoom meeting link will be posted to the town website. Meetings calendar applications are on file and available for public inspection during normal business hours at the Planning Department, 134 Groton Long Point Road, Groton, Connecticut, 6340, and at the office of the town clerk, 45 Fort Hill Road, Groton, Connecticut. The proposed draft zoning regulations can also be viewed on the town's website. All persons having interest in the application are invited to attend, comment, and provide testimony and evidence.
Thank you very much, Al. Okay, Attorney Sweeney.
Apologize for being up here too much tonight. For the record, my name is Bill Sweeney, partner and land use attorney at the law firm Tobin Carver. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible tonight, during the hour. I appear before you on behalf of ETB Groton LLC, which is a Connecticut limited liability company. It's also a holding company affiliate of the Seven Brew Drive-Through Coffee Shop, which has a purchase contract on some commercial land along Longpole Road in Groton. Seven Brew Drive-Through Coffee Shop was founded in 2017. It's one of the fastest growing beverage brands in the country. It's got over 500 locations in 58 states. We have workshopped this application with the commission prior to submission. Tonight, as you know, we've submitted a zoning text amendment to create a new classification of restaurant use within the zoning regulations, one which has its principal method of operation and service involving a drive-through facility and allowed only by special permit. If this text amendment application is approved, it is my client's intention to come back before the commission this summer with a formal special permit application for a Seven Brew drive-through coffee shop here in Groton, which will be one of the first in Eastern Connecticut. Joining me tonight, I've got representatives of Seven Brew Coffee and of DTB Groton LLC. Again, as this application is a change to your zoning regulations, you sit in your legislative capacity. You need to review the application in consideration of the plan of conservation and development and your comprehensive plan for zoning as it exists at the time of the application. Furthermore, you have the ability to approve this, to deny it, or to modify it and make it more restrictive. We talked about that already tonight. Obviously, we have specific use and specific property in mind, but this is an application of general applicability. Will apply to all properties which are eligible under the provisions of this regulation. The newly proposed classification of restaurant use, again, will principally focus on operation and service involving the drive-through facility. And that's going to be distinguished from what we call standard and fast food restaurants under your regulations, which allow drive-through facilities as accessory uses to their principal use of serving food, typically in a seated dining experience. Drive-through restaurants as proposed are generally smaller venues. They often have seating. They're perfect, quite frankly, for infill development of smaller sites along commercial corridors. They require substantially less infrastructure. They operate effectively on smaller parcels and more compact sites. As I said before, we met with the commission earlier this year on an informal workshop process, and we developed the zoning text amendment that's before you tonight based on the direction and the input that you provided us, but also that of the staff as we work through the details. We've refined it based on that input, and we based it in part on your existing accessory drive-through provisions. But obviously, there are some key differences. First and foremost, this is a principal use. In an economy that's favoring smaller retail venues that provide faster service, enhanced convenience, we think this proposal is really well timed to capture some additional economic development and to help some redevelopment in your Group 1 node area as well. I'd like to just review the regulations with you briefly tonight. The first change that we're making is an actual change in definition. We're giving a defined definition for a drive-through restaurant, and that is an establishment whose business involves the sale of pre-prepared or rapidly prepared foods, confections, or beverages to the customer in a ready-to-consume state. and whose principal method of operation is to take and deliver orders from a building opening, window, door, or mechanical/electronic device through which occupants of a vehicle receive the product. We then go to your table of permitted uses in section 4. We add restaurant, drive-through as an SP/C permitted with special permit / permitted with conditions use only in the MTC and the CR district. It's not allowed anywhere else. We then actually add the provisions that govern drive-through restaurants in section 5(1)-9C. We start by saying that the conditions apply only to the following zoning districts: the MTC and the CR, no other zoning districts. We also make clear that any drive-through restaurant is a specially permitted use subject to certain following conditions. This is important because accessory drive-throughs don't always require a special permit. Often they're allowed by site plan as part of a restaurant or fast food development. But this, the drive-through restaurant, is special permit no matter what. So principal use, special permit, again, only in the MTC and the CR districts. You'll see that we have a number of provisions that are very similar to your accessory requirements. First, the location on site. Drive-through facilities, including required stacking lanes, must be located in rear or side yards only. That's exactly the same as you have for your accessory use. You'll note that we do not have a curb cut provision. Your accessory regulations basically say you can't add an additional curb cut for an accessory drive-through. Well, this is the principal use. We needed a curb cut. So there's no curb cut restriction in this version. That's the difference. I'm just highlighting the difference. We have a minimum lot size. The minimum lot size for a drive-through restaurant is 10,000 square feet, which is less than what's required in some zones for the accessory drive-through. Again, drive-through restaurants are usually smaller, they're more compact. They can effectively function on smaller parcels. The next one is stacking spaces. Again, this is very similar to accessory, but we have reduced the stacking spaces slightly, and we've made a little change with double stacking. So it reads that a minimum of 8 stacking spaces. It's 10 for a typical accessory on a full restaurant or a full standard restaurant, but we have a minimum of 8 stacking spaces entering and 1 stacking space exiting must be provided for each drive-through window or service location, including the vehicle being serviced. We also have added the word stacking lanes may be double stacked based on anticipated customer traffic. On these compact sites, double stacked lanes can often allow you to get a lot more cars and a lot more queue in a much smaller space. We also have the same languages as the accessory drive-through, where an order board or pickup window are involved. At such an establishment, a minimum of 5 stacking spaces should be provided before the order board.
Just one question. Then.
Yeah.
When you have the 8 stacking spaces, does that basically take the full length of the driveway going in there to the window or the order thing? It sounds like a lot, but.
It would, yeah, and so we put that in there, but we allow basically the stacking of lanes to address that issue. But you can't have your drive-through facilities in the front yard. You have to be in the rear side.
Right.
So you can't have like pull off and have your stacking lane right there. You have to get around to the side of the building. That's just for safe and efficient travel through the site.
Okay, thank you.
The size of stacking lanes must be 10 feet wide and each space is 20 feet long. No change from the accessory. Circulation, stacking lanes have to be separate from internal aisles, which allow traffic to circulate throughout the site without entering the drive-through facility. Same as the accessory standard. Exiting space and exiting stacking space must be separate from other circulation aisles. That is the same. There's no setback to the front though for that, and that's because we're dealing with much smaller lots. Finally, then traffic and pedestrian circulation, stacking lanes should be designed and located to minimize traffic congestion and promote pedestrian safety using safe pavement marking signs and designated walkways, same as the accessory standard. But we've added this additional standard within the MTC district, which is the district that covers a lot of Route 1. Restaurants shall provide provisions for the service of pedestrian customers. We've added that because your MTC district includes pedestrian movement and pedestrian interactions. We don't want to make it fully within the MTC. There's got to be some pedestrian accessibility and use. And then finally, we modified the parking spaces. I'm sorry.
Quick question on that. Do you have it only for the MTC but not the CR?
That's correct.
Why not the CR?
The CR is your regional commercial that's more vehicle driven to begin with. You certainly could add it. You could basically say restaurants shall provide provisions for pedestrian customers if you wish. that's fine. The MPC has in its purpose the idea of pedestrian, and that's why we did that. Only that reason. It doesn't mean it wouldn't be a bad idea in the CR if you felt it was appropriate. And then parking spaces, because we don't have seating typically in these, rather than being driven by the number of seats or the number of patron area, because a lot of these won't have any area within the building patron, it's really driven by employees. So the minimum parking spaces is one parking space for every employee on the largest regular scheduled shift, and the maximum is 1.5 space for every employee. And again, that's different than the accessory drive-throughs, because those are tied to principal uses of standard restaurants and fast food restaurants, which derive their parking from actual seat counts. So again, it's a very simple change. It's using all the language that you already use. It's just elevating the idea of having a drive-through restaurant as a principal use, not as an accessory use. And it allows it in very specific places. And most importantly, as I've made this case multiple times to the commission, it's governed by special permit. So you have that the maximum discretion possible as an administrative application before you. Happy to take any questions, but I did submit, in the interest of time, I did submit, and I think it's in your packet, and I know it's in your memorandum. There's a very detailed description of how this applies with plan of development and the comprehensive plan. It's very late. I'm very tired. I'm sure you are. I don't need to go over that, but if you want me to go over it, I will for the record. But it is part of the record in my submission.
Is that be okay with moving on?
Yeah, so then I'd love to hear from staff, right?
No, that's what, that's.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
I'll be
I just have one question for the attorney.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Traffic studies.
Yeah.
You must have some detailed traffic studies that indicate how fast people go through this kind of line and what is the impact on traffic, considering it's likely this is going to be in a fairly high traffic area.
Yeah, it's a great question. So my client, as do every other client I've ever worked with that does drive-through, have their own internal studies. And it's important to their business model to understand they can predict almost to exactly predictions. They can predict how many people are going to be in their stacking lines and at what hour, and they can map that out because they have so many locations. So what we would intend to do is, because a special permit requires an evaluation of traffic, is when we come before the commission with an application for a drive-through restaurant, we will demonstrate you based on our own internal metrics that our stacking spaces will be sufficient at those peak hours. And then our traffic study, which we would submit with it, will show that our access points surrounding intersections are not adversely impacted because of those queues and that traffic. So that would all be addressed in the special permit, and that's one of the criteria of special permit. We have to address the impact.
That's very helpful, because the obviously by definition you want to put these in areas where there is fairly high traffic, because that you want your customer base are people who are going to be coming in and out quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And different, again, I don't want to get into specific applications, but different operators have different ways of taking orders. So there are operators, for instance, that are really driven by pass-through traffic. You drive by, you see it, you stop. There are now in this world, we have a lot of online ordering before you can get there. So it's sort of waiting for you. We'll talk a little bit about that if we get to the special permit stage, and that's part of our overall business metric that we'll explain.
Okay.
I've got another little one that could be a discussion, but I think I'll ask. I'm going to add a little wrinkle here because the MTC zone, we must have some pedestrian access.
Yeah.
Therefore, there'll be a pedestrian window of some kind.
Yes.
Therefore, you will be able to walk up.
Yeah.
Therefore, because of that, some people will want to drive up and get out of their cars. And there's no place to park. You might need to add parking to accommodate some who would end up being there. Right now, it doesn't seem to allow for that. It seems like there should be some additional parking.
And again, so we've got a range of 1 to 1.5 spaces. So we wouldn't want to have more parking spaces than we have for employees at our largest shift. If our largest shift is 10 employees, why would we want 15 parking spaces? That's a possibility.
This is why.
Have that. But we built that in, so that's why it's not just 1 and 1. It's 1 and 1.5.
I thought that was the maximum.
That's the maximum.
1.5 is the maximum.
So you could do. You don't have to do the maximum.
We might not, but we have the ability to. So if we have a walking up area, we could throw in, let's say we have in our British shift, I'm just using picking a number, we have 10 people, 10 employees. Well, we may put 13 spaces on the site, 10 for our employees, and then 3 extra, which could be used for the public for a drive up. We could do that if the design warranted it.
Okay.
Could I make the point though that these are going in areas that we want to be more pedestrian friendly? So why even consider, I don't care if you want to come up
Well, if
here.
there were an adjacent parking area, then I'd say that's great, but.
You can't
it's-
choose that because this is a text amendment and we
It's a
can't,
text amendment.
no parcels,
Here's
right?
an issue that we're gonna have, because if it's for anywhere else, I'd say, well, you park on the street.
I think it's an,
No, you can't park on the street.
Well,
in an effort,
on a specific site, like Long Hill Road, for example, not any specific site, but in the MTC zone along Hill
That's
Road.
correct, yeah.
That's exactly right. So you would ask, I think a reasonable question you would ask is, well, if you're promoting that area, what if somebody wants to get out of their car? Are you gonna tell them they can't? No. So where are those people parked? We want to show you that on the site then.
Okay.
Whether it's my client or some other client.
Okay.
and just my question about adding the CR, I would like to add the CR. It does say specifically in the definition of CR that it's for Route 12 and 184. And looking at the zoning map, those are areas that we want to increase pedestrian friendliness to.
We have no objection to taking that limitation out.
Is it a limit? I guess
Yeah,
if we can make a text amendment only more restrictive.
MTC district.
Yeah.
So you could literally, in your control, strike that and just say, restaurants shall provide provisions for the service of pedestrian customers.
Would that make it more permissive though? Or
No.
less?
Now you're saying you're requiring an additional service for anyone under this regulation, not just MTC, so it's more restrictive.
Okay, I'm just not trying to run afoul of the modifications.
You can always do that.
Okay, thank you.
But we have no problem with that, Kate. That's very reasonable.
Okay.
All right.
What is double stacking?
Oh,
Is that
no.
two cars side by side?
Yeah.
Sorry, my brain is muddy.
It's like a Big Mac, you get 2, right? You get 2 burgers.
All right.
Been all night for this.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
Excited.
And just to kind of answer your question too, Hal, I'll get into my thing. Because it's a special permit, if there's a need for additional parking, we can ask for the 1.5. So you can say, instead of just doing the minimum, you say, well, we really want to see the 1.5 to give that opportunity there. So, all right. Let's see, where are we? So the required referrals have all been sent out. The legal notice has been posted as required. This proposed text amendment originally stems from an initial discussion that Attorney Sweeney talked about with the Planning and Zoning Commission back on January 7th of this year. The applicant discussed a proposed drive-through coffee shop, which he discussed, which currently is not a permitted use as a principal use right now. So this text amendment defines this new type of use in the CR, so commercial regional, and the MTC, mixed use town center districts. Approval again requires the special permit with conditions, including stacking spaces, traffic, and pedestrian circulation. The minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet, and it also provides updates to the table of permitted uses along with the parking space requirements table. Staff did a review of the zoning regulations from 9 other communities. So as part of the staff report, that was part of the packet there. I looked at 9 other communities within the state here that have similar regulations, and they're all completely in line with what's being proposed as part of this text amendment. In terms of communication, the only comment we got was from the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments. They reviewed the text amendment and determined that will not have a negative intermunicipal impact. Other than that, there were no additional public comments. I can talk a little bit about the consistency with the POCD, just so takes Attorney Sweeney off the hook a little bit. But so the proposed text amendments are consistent with the POCD, specifically the encouragement of new economic development and redevelopment of Groton's commercial areas with a focus on small businesses. Also, the creation of a viable mixed-use downtown, and really a movement away from strip-type commercial development. In terms of timing, the hearing, today starts obviously the 35 days. The hearing must close by June 16th. I did send a draft motion to you all to take a look at for your consideration. The one thing that's changed from the draft motion mentions it, but the staff report's a little different. So if approved, right now, we're looking at an effective date that would be Friday, June 5th, rather than July 1st, at the request of the applicant. So.
Any other questions? Do you have the draft motion?
I do,
have a
yep.
copy?
And
And ask, there's still.
Oh, I'm sorry, I keep forgetting.
There are people in the audience, so.
Does anybody on the Zoom audience wish to ask a question? Okay, seeing none, I'll take a motion to close it.
Anybody in the audience?
Oh, anybody in the audience? I'm sorry, no, that.
You know.
Look at that.
Thank you, Portia Bordelon, full disclosure, Groton Town Council, but also speaking tonight as a resident. I am familiar with this concept and I think it is important to look at this. Some of the things about having a walk up at a primary drive-through, we have to look at the safety. So how that is actually cut out is very vital and when deciding where that window is going to be for safety. Also, when looking at it, you have to think about the handicap accessibility. Some people can't reach for the window. And so having that walk-up component is a viable option and should be considered, in my opinion. And with that, you would need a couple parking spaces and make sure that one of those are also handicapped for a person who needs handicap accessibility. And also the requirements with the window that is designed, it should meet the ADA compliance, obviously, which usually does. But again, just some of the thoughts and things that I did when I was reading about this. And then some places looked at like hours of operation, these sometimes windows, these speakers can be very loud. Hi, can I take your order? And there are people, it's in the back, but the buffer, what is that going to be like? Do you guys have a sound component? Because there are people, even though that's a major district, you can hear those echoing, especially when it's low driving days, the echo, when you drive down Route 1, if it's really quiet, but your windows open late at night, that it amplifies. So just looking at that noise component as to what the, what's around and what we're going to be allowing as far as noise and what's the hours of operation that you're going to, some places went even more specific with just drive ups being limited with hours. Again, I'm not saying you have to, but I'm just saying, looking at all those different variables. Also looking at the land, right, since it's not going to be, consumed by people in a natural state as far as coming in, but really making sure the decor and what you guys are asking for vegetation is appealing on some of these types of things. So they don't look like box drive ups. Some people in certain communities that I read in different states had concerns because these were popping up everywhere and they didn't fit the tapestry. And so they weren't conforming to the normal standards of, trees and coverage and shade. They just look like hot spots with concrete and buttons and cars and exhaust just blowing everywhere. So definitely important to not limit some of those things and really encourage that, flexibility to enhance the land. And also if you have people walking up, are you going to provide or allow picnic tables or no? Like that's another consideration because some people drive up, grab their coffee and want to park and hop out in that parking spot and maybe sit at a picnic table and drink their coffee. Like, you go to some Dairy Queens in different towns and it's only a drive up or a walk up, but then they have an area. So are you allowing seating outside or is this no seating at all? I think that should be defined in this and what that would look like. As we know, during COVID, people liked that ability not to go into a building. So it is kind of a thing to consider. But again, traffic, noise, lighting, I know a lot of people talk about these car washes and oil places that have gone up. They come with these big neon lights. I mean, that's other things to consider. And I already touched upon the hours of operation. So those are the things that people reached out to me about and making sure, they look nice, they're presentable. I mean, there are a lot of businesses that are much older on this road. And so any new enhancement is, we're setting the standard as we change these text amendments. We should be looking at ways to improve that beautification on these strips and having that as part of it. Again, I talked about the window being handicap accessible, ADA compliant. I talked about if they're going to have parking, making sure you have handicap parking for people to get out. The tables, I hit on that. Noise, lighting, amplified microphones, an hour of operation. Is this a chance where you might change the hour of operation? Maybe there's not a need to. Are these going to be 24-hour establishments? Some communities did delineate that in their drive up only availability. And again, I'm not saying which way to go. I just look into that. But I think it's important to look at all different ways to have business and support businesses. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Portia. Okay, anybody else online? Okay,
Did we not have, wasn't there, like Juice Sushi was one of these and the film things that used to be
Yes.
that in that little
Yeah.
shopping center?
Yes, but it was prior to your current regulations that were adopted in 2000.
But that's, okay, all right.
Yep.
I just, I was looking at the MTC and thinking that's,
Yep.
okay.
Motion to close the public hearing.
I hear a second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? Okay. So do we have a motion?
But here's the yours.
First up is open space common interest community. Would you like to continue that to? the next
Continue that
meeting?
discussion.
Dear God,
Yes.
Absolutely.
But not tonight.
That's
Continue.
Okay, now the motion.
All right, I have a motion, but one thing that I did hear, and as long as it's okay with the applicant, is I want to make a modification to actually remove 5.1-9.c7 to remove the section that says within the MTC districts. So what it'll read is a restaurant shall provide provisions for the service of pedestrian customers. That
Thank you.
work?
Yes.
Let me just make it really quick. Who's gonna read?
I don't know.
I'll do it.
Al, you were so good at the last one.
You were good.
Just won't have the modification on it, but Lauren has that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. Sure, go ahead, thank you.
Motion to approve zoning regulation text amendment application Reg A26 tax 00032 add new section 5.1 tax 9.c restaurant drive-through to create standards and conditions for drive-through restaurants, to amend section 2.1 general definitions to add a definition of drive-through restaurant, 3, amend table 4.1 table of permitted uses to allow drive-through restaurant in the MTC and CR districts by special permit with conditions. 4, amend table 8.2 TAC 4 parking space requirements to add drive-through restaurant as a new category under restaurants, bars, and clubs. With the following modification: 1, remove quote within the MTC district end quote from section 5.1 TAC 9.c.7.
Okay. Okay.
Keep going.
You all, all right. Well,
You're gonna read the whole thing.
All
Sorry, Lauren.
right. Yeah, no, the town of Groton Planning and Zoning Commission adopts zoning regulation text amendment. Reg A26 tag 0003 pursuant to the following findings and reasons for approval. The zoning text amendment is consistent with the town's 2016 Plan of Conservation and Development with particular regards to recommendations encouraging new economic and redevelopment of Groton's commercial areas, efforts to focus economic development on small businesses, and the creation of a viable mixed-use downtown. 2, this amendment is consistent with the town's municipal coastal program and CGS sections 22A TAC 90 through 22A TAC 111. 3, this amendment is made in accordance with the comprehensive plan for the town of Groton and provides for reasonable consideration of the environment in Long Island Sound in accordance with the provisions of CGS 8 TAC 2. The effective date of this amendment shall be June 5th, 2026.
Second. Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Stay. Okay, it carries. Congratulations.
Who's second?
You second that? Yeah, that's what I thought, yeah.
You guys have a lot of coffee.
You guys have another reason.
Where's that guy
Can I-
who said that I'm not gonna live 20 years? What was that? How are you? You're like 20 years old.
I know. I have to.
I don't think he was talking to me.
Oh, I thought he was.
Yeah, that was classic.
Take care.
That was too much to accept 20 years. I'm like.
I was thinking the whole time, he was on the planning and zoning commission for 40 years. So
But we're all
maybe you
having
guys will be
fun.
here for another 20.
I hope not. Who knows? Maybe we'll get more and more fun.
Maybe.
How could it get
So,
more fun?
Public communication.
yes, minutes. I wanna, can we defer the minutes till the next meeting? Okay, this goes. Yeah. I'm not in the mood. I have a few things to say.
That's fine.
But if I think about more, it'll go
That's fine.
faster too. Yeah, I need public communications or special permits, subdivisions. Site
Old business, new
plans,
business.
old business, new business,
Got a referral.
new applications.
Nope.
I'm searching for something. Okay, reported chair next time. Oops, reported commission. Anybody have anything
I
to
do.
say?
So
Okay.
I don't know if it's governed by statute, Deb, but I really love public comment, right? And we get public comment sometimes at 4 or 5 o'clock and I'm doing crazy things. Can we limit public comment to 24 hours?
You really can't.
Yeah.
People-
Yeah, they can walk in, right?
Okay.
Yep, you can. I mean, the only thing you can do in sense is limit the time people have to speak to you. You know,
I'm
something
fine with
goes on
that.
for 25
Right.
minutes, or, you know, yeah.
I'm fine letting people speak. I think it's very good.
Yep.
Public communication with constituents.
I noticed that the town council did that on the P O C D. They limited it.
Well, they limit on everything.
Yeah.
I don't think that they should necessarily be our blueprint, but
That's not the template, Jim, that we're looking for.
No, I'm just saying it's been doing.
When they come in after 4 o'clock, we just print them out and we have them here for you to read, and I prefer that.
yes.
But we should probably, if we're gonna do that, we could do that, but we should also probably do both. Because not everyone's gonna be able to read it, but some of you may have the time in between 4 and 7 to read them, so you may want to be, rather than kind of scrambling to try to read it. So we could do both.
Just electronically to know that you have something
Yeah.
to send it.
And I'm not always checking my email.
Right, I know
Every
that's
time
the
it's
issue.
me, it's like,
Certainly do that.
Yeah.
And not that there's really any public here to listen, but you know, if somebody sends us something at 5 till 7.
Yeah.
Electronically, we're not.
We might
getting
miss it.
Yeah, we're not.
Oh, sure.
Or checking our phones or anything, so.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
I attended the middle housing talk that they had at Avery Point. Seemed like it was really well attended, and I'm glad that that kind of outreach is being made, because I think that some people heard things and it was good.
Yeah.
It was a
It was really good, yeah.
Especially with grad students afterwards, it was really interesting.
That's
Really
great.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody else?
There is the public hearing for the 2026 POCD on Thursday at 5:30 here.
30, right.
5:30.
There.
Right here. No, here.
But here, next
But-
year, yep.
Yep, in the council chambers. I'll be there and I hope everyone else will. And I hope the public who might still be listening will be there as well. And also I'm looking forward to my land use training this weekend. I don't know if
Okay.
anyone else from the commission's going this weekend.
No, I love that.
Yeah.
I know.
Did
I
you
heard
take
that.
that?
I
I
heard
think
that
it's different. Is it not different?
That was the same thing.
What?
I thought it was a different topic. than
Different topic. of the
Different
speaker.
topic, yeah.
One thing I heard.
You gotta
that
do it
the
every
town
year.
Council made some changes to the P O C D or suggestions or whatever. they did.
Recommendations, I mean, that's.
Did they make
I don't know.
recommendations?
I wouldn't.
Is it possible to get those?
Yeah.
Or would they be on?
So you can certainly watch the meeting. This was committee of the whole.
Please no.
Right, I know. This was committee of the whole, so they're really not going to be
Yeah.
approved, I guess,
Yep,
until the
yep.
town council meeting, but sure, we'll look at the meeting for you and get it.
Oh, you're wonderful. Thank you.
Or
Okay, perfect.
I can give you a copy of this if you want. This was proposed by, you can pass it around and I can
Oh.
look back after, but it is on the meeting.
Oh, okay.
It was a zoning, a thing that you guys had taken out and they, suggesting that you guys put it back in. Can't say all the counselors, I will speak to it.
email from John Boat.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay,
Copies.
I'll you know what? Let me or do you want to just send
Do
it
you want to
out?
take it and make copies?
Yeah.
Or just
Thank you.
email, maybe.
Before tonight,
And
okay.
came from John Reiner, counselor basically.
Oh, well, then I guess.
I guess you should be able to
Yeah, for
get
John.
it.
You know him.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you can take that, take a free photo.
Residential densities on the flume.
Yeah, okay, let's continue on. Yeah, okay, so, report of staff.
I just have two things. Shannon sent out the announcement for the May 22 meeting in Stonington for housing. For those of you who missed the Groton presentation, it's essentially the same. And you are welcome to attend over in Stonington. This is about Public Act 25-1.
Yeah.
Okay, and along those lines, I know, I know you guys are really excited about text amendments. But at the next meeting, I'm going to have like preliminary text for you to review to make us compliant with 25-1. There's not a lot that this town has to do. We do most of the things that are required in it, but there are a couple of tweaks.
Sure, okay.
And the Stonington meeting, I understand you don't have to say whether you're going or not, you just show up,
just show
or you
up.
Zoom it as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay, great. ASP report, application update.
All in there.
Questions?
Okay. All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
All right, all's in favor? Yes,
Yay.
well, thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
10:45.